That's it. We're live. Today is Monday, the 22nd of October. Of course, time's flying, isn't it? 2018. Hello, chat room. On the panel is Flat Earth Dude and Astral. Guests are Trinity for Dave, Manal, and Lifting the Lid, Robin. So good evening, everybody.
Hi, Karen. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, Karen.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. And welcome, Trinity 4, Dave.
Thank you.
Dave, pleasure to hang out with you, man.
Likewise, bro.
Pleasure, brother. Lifting the lid. Love you, man. Great.
Great
stuff, man.
Nice to see you again, mate.
Astral, you're all right. All right, man. Whatever. No, I'm just...
Yeah, cheers, dude. You're
Karen,
the
thank you.
You're all awesome, and I love you all.
Love you,
to bits.
I love you, man. Love you to
I think
bits.
you should change your name, though, Flat Earth Dude. It should be the Cool Flat Earth.
No, I'm just hanging out, trying to find the truth, man. Like the rest of us. That's what we're doing.
Well, we appreciate you, and you're a big part of Sun and Moon. Anyway, Dave, how's the gardening today?
I was gardening around an 80-year-old lady's place this morning. Let me think if anything interesting happened. I think sometimes when you get older, you lose control of your bowels. And this lady, every time she turns around, lets one go. I just try and move the conversation. I just try and keep talking over that and pretend I haven't heard it, just for to prevent her own embarrassment. But
awkward.
Yeah, the gardening for me is like something that I got into a few years ago. Once I left my sort of comfortable government type job, I started trying to work with do whatever I could to keep the rent paid, and gardening was one of those things that I turned to. And I love being outdoors. I love pruning trees, working physically. It means I never have to think about going down to the gym or anything like that. I just do a day's work, and I'm stay fit by that. I get all that outdoor time, sunshine when the weather's decent, and I'm my own boss. So yeah, for me it's really grounding, really centering, particularly when we've got some of the craziness going on. I don't know if you heard, but about 6 days ago I had the police come into my house, about 8 of them, and ransack my house under section 23 or 25 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. They'd said I'd been selling cannabis, which I wasn't. I grow a little bit of my own for my own family's needs, my own needs. And I told them that, and that's all they found. So they destroyed my plants, but they couldn't charge me with anything. They gave me what's called a community order, which is me sign a little piece of paper says it's okay, they can destroy my plants. That was my get out of jail free card, as it were. And so that's my current gardening situation. I loved my plants, actually. I love looking after my cannabis plants. I talk to them. I spend a little bit of time each day with them, and even my little boy Alexander looks in the garden and the pots are where they were and wonders. We used to go and water them every morning. We'd spend some time together with them, and they've just vanished. They've just gone. So that's a tough thing to come to terms with. Now I have to go out and buy it from dealers. I said this to the cops. It says, you guys are the criminals. Now I have to go and deal with the street again to get my weed. That's just insanity. And here's an interesting statistic that the UK government licenses the growing of cannabis and is the largest exporter of medical cannabis in the world. It grows 95 tons of cannabis under license, right, in this country. But if you grow a few plants for your own medicinal needs, that's too much of a problem. In fact, the guy who was running the investigation, I think he saw the plants, and I don't know how, but got a photo to him, and he saw what I was growing and said, "Oh, you look like you had a lot of weed." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I grow outside, so I get one crop. You've come at harvest time. It's no wonder I have quite a lot, because I've got to have a barn full to last me for the rest of the year, right?" Anyway, that's my tale of woe.
Oh, dearie me. Big Flat Earth hugs there, then.
Man, well, I mean, we all know that cannabis is actually very good for you, and I suffer. I could say I suffered with PTSD from my time in the war as a kid and so on, but I know that I'm better on it. I know that it's the endocannabinoid system is part of our human body, and I nurture it in the way that I can by eating cannabis raw and smoking it. I also use it as a tincture, and this is something that people will find interesting because I use I steep it into coconut oil and use that for either topical use or orally. And even some older folks who I've dealt with over time, they find it very beneficial. Now the police came through my house like a whirlwind and went through everything, but they were like robots when it came to the cannabis, coconut cannabis oil. They just looked at it, put it down, and moved on. They don't recognize it. So if you're making your own or you've got your own cannabis oil, they don't know what it is and they won't bother you for using it. I think they only recognize the flower.
Is it not? It's going legal on the 1st. Is that correct?
For doctors to prescribe some certain types of cannabis in certain kinds of condition, and by cannabis I should say medical, like I don't know, I haven't read the newspapers, but I don't know that it's actually bud. It's more like a drug that has been like Sativex or Marinol or one of these that has been drawn out of the plant, and then they've been able to make profit and tax and all that business from it. It's not like just going down your dispensaries like you might be able to do in some of the American states now, or Canada.
California, yeah, here in California, man, we're open for business.
My 18-year-old niece is just over from Orange County. She's spending 4 months with me, and she's telling me all about it because she enjoys the benefits of medical marijuana.
That's where I live. We probably go to the same dispensaries.
I'll have to get a look.
There's one called here, the People's. Okay. Yeah, it's a big one.
Well, there's a move towards collaboration between people starting to grow and so on. I know that the UK is going to have to eventually fall in line with common sense. And I know it'll go that way, but when I look at the Canadian model, I'm like, I feel like I've done a video. One of my first videos on this channel was to say, don't legalize cannabis. And by that, I mean, we should not really allow the government to have any say in the cannabis story. Yes, you might have farmers, you might have drug companies that make cannabis products, and those should be done under kind of license or done under proper so on and so on. But we're talking essentially about a plant, and if people know how to take lavender and make it into an oil and use that oil, then the same is true with cannabis. If people can do it and they want to pass it on to their neighbors or even flog a bit to their neighbors, heck, who are we to say that you can't grow tomatoes and pass them down the neighborhood? And for me, this is cannabis needs to become ubiquitous. You need to become sort of like in every garden, and then the price will fall. The availability will fall. Be right, and the government will be out of the pictures as they should be when it comes to personal health.
Can I say something there, Dave, please?
Please.
I agree. It should be allowed at your household because all this with medicinal cannabis. Well, for one, it's synthesized, so they're not even the tablets that people are prescribed this cannabinol, or I don't know the names totally, but they do have names. You can get tablet form, can't you?
Yes.
And but they're synthesized, and because they're synthesized, they've not got the 100% same thing as what a plant would have. That's what I'm seeing. So I'm kind of against this synthesization of things. I prefer the natural way.
You need to go to Waitrose or wherever it is and buy, instead of buying rocket or lettuce, bags of leaves, add it to the salads.
Correct.
Eat it.
Absolutely. And as the plant itself raw is so full of nutrients, omegas and whatnot. So either the seeds, the plants, the buds, the whole thing is so really, really good for you. And to your point, Astral, I did a little bit of work with a lady with MS. I was trying to advise her to sort of some of the natural ways of she could medicate herself, and she and I went along to one of the neurosurgeons that she was involved with, and he was talking about how yes, we prescribed this. We used to be a few years ago now. We were able to prescribe it for a while on the NHS, but my research and his was the same, and that is that people don't get as good a result from a synthesized product. not only that, when they do an extract, they have to take sort of one phase of 1,000 or 500 different elements of the plant, and they use that one on its own to target a particular thing, which is what allopathic medicine is all about, really, isn't it? Whereas when you take the whole plant, then there are a combination of cannabinoids that you cannot replicate in a lab. And I think it's this whole spectrum that the cannabis plant, really, we're fiddling around the edges. The government is getting us, or the pharmaceutical companies, so that they can profit, they can make patents. They're fiddling around the edges rather
That's
than.
it. I mean, we know that one plant has got. Well, I know personally, it's got over 700 medicinal uses. Over 700. And I won't list them all because I can't remember them all. But it has. Sorry, can you hear me? It's got. Yeah, sorry, I'm walking backwards in the dark. But it's got over 700 medicinal purposes, and they know they can get, 700 different kinds of tablets, and those 700 tablets. Well, we know how much a pack of tablets costs, don't we? It's about money. Big Pharma knows this. That's why.
It is about money, but I think also part of the genie is not only about health. It's also about the consciousness. I've got a feeling that cannabis, well, not a feeling, other research is what's behind this, is that, there is a lot to be said for it opening the mind and expanding the mind and allowing the consciousness to expand. And on the flip side of that, I have to suggest that alcohol must be the antithesis thereof, and which is why it's so popular. I think perhaps alcohol burns the neurons, or it burns certain aspects of what we're, what's meant to be at the higher consciousness. I'm not saying that people shouldn't drink any alcohol, but I think it's called spirits for a reason, and it's not good spirits. Whereas cannabis has to be, well, in my experience, from being as an author, I found myself writing better.
If you're not in a happy state, nothing's going to work anyway, I suppose, is it? If you drink or you do smoke or whatever you're going to do. But I met someone and he was an alcoholic, 5 bottles of wine a day. And I started reading literature about like how to deal with an alcoholic. And it basically says when someone drinks like that, it's the biggest depressant anybody can take. So every day, people who drink heavily and are depressed are actually self-inflicting depression on themselves by drinking. For the very first drink or two, you might get a high, and after that, it's depression, basically. And so it turned me right off alcohol.
No, I think yeah, it's fair to say that even with cannabis, it can be used to assuage depression. There's no getting around that, and it gets this bad rap because people who have perhaps psychotic types of personalities also find it an attractive drug for various reasons. Partly that it does make you feel good, but I guess there are a number of things to be said about the mental health. And when it comes to the flat earth, and when it comes to realizing that our entire his education is actually indoctrination, then you realize why there's so much poor mental health in our world today. Because we have been poisoned, mind, body, and soul from before your grandparents were born.
Knowledge too.
Does anyone know the Rick Simpson story?
Yes. Rick Simpson,
that's a great story. It's an awesome story, isn't it? Because he went to the doctor with a tumor, and his doctor said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." So he went away, figured out that cannabis oil might be a good healing tincture or healing medicine. So he treated himself over 3 months and saw some marked improvement. He went back to his doctor and said, "Look, I'm rapidly improving. Can you put this on prescription for me?" And the doctor said, and Rick Simpson got quite agitated and kind of sacked his doctor at that point and just said, "Well, if you can't help me, I'm going to help myself." And that began the Rick Simpson story, which is phenomenal if you've seen it.
It is phenomenal, but
I'm sorry to interrupt you there. That's I didn't know the story, but that's the guy, Phoenix Tears, isn't it? If I'm not wrong.
That's the man. Yeah, that's right. And if I can add another thing to the conversation here, has anyone seen the film The Union? It's about the story of the hemp plant. It's a phenomenal documentary, and it just documents, it catalogues the big banking interests, the petrochemical companies, the big oil companies' interest in the hemp plant.
What was the name of it again? You broke up then, just as you said it for me. Robin, what was it called? The Union or something?
Hang on, he's just
And the
glitching
great
a little
things.
bit.
The film is called The Union, and it sort of catalogues the 1910, 20, and 30, when the US were growing them as massive crops for clothing, for insulation, and they started with hempcrete bricks, and you could make properties from them. And when you list the derivatives from the petrol industry, the petrochemical industry has something like 3,200 derivatives, and hemp can mimic and replicate 2,000 to 800 of those 3,200 derivatives. So it's no wonder
from hemp.
Yeah, yeah. So no wonder they wanted to squash it and drive it underground. And that film got me really thinking, because they also showed what's going on in Canada.
I don't want to impose on you here now, but isn't it true that Henry Ford built a car made purely out of hemp, or is that just a rumor?
Yeah.
They made. I know they had paper and ropes and stuff. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and the word canvas comes from cannabis.
Yeah, so the film then goes on to say what's going on in Canada, where it's legalized. Oh, I think they had certain days when it was legal, but what they showed was this guy had a disused railway carriage as his grow, and he said, "Yeah, I'm absolutely fine in here. I can grow it." And people were growing like major crops, and it's just a totally different culture. And then bring yourself right up to speed to this year. I went to Amsterdam this year. Oh my life, that is one crazy place. It's like no word of a lie, probably 6 coffee shops on every street, or shops that can sell cannabis or cannabis oil or something of that nature on every street. Amazing place.
I just want to offer something on the what I call Amsterdam project, and that is that, I mean, it's one of those crazy moral dichotomies that they force us to live with. You know, it's absolutely, well, not absolutely fine, but it's tolerated in Amsterdam for all these years, and all around the place. It's, you know, draconian, you know, your jackbooted guys storming into your house where you got babies and so on. Now, I call it the Amsterdam project because I think that what they've done is they've weaponized cannabis in this way, and they've made it so potent. As I said to my 18-year-old niece, you know, when I've been out to America latterly and smoked some weed out there, it knocks me down. And I know that you can get different types and so on and so forth, but I think one of the legitimate complaints about skunk is that it renders a lot of the smokers sort of fairly useless, and what, you know, one doesn't want that. You know, for me, I'm a 30-year veteran of smoking. I was against cannabis as a youngster coming through the army. It was something that was a complete no-no. But after the army, I got offered a joint. I had a smoke, and I was like, shit. Now that feels quite good, actually. And since then, I've smoked, but I was, you know, keen to be a participant in life and not, you know, spend my whole life playing computer games or whatever and eating, you know, M&Ms. So, you know, I just want to add that, you know, that this isn't just a, you know, a blind, you know, don't, you know, I'm always the first person to say no one's ever died from cannabis, and, you know, you can't really hurt yourself with it. But, you know, I think most people, if they're using it medicinally, if they're using it for their life, will get to a point where it's a balanced kind of consumption, one that, you know, they can manage. And which is why I started growing my own. It's not particularly strong, and it doesn't cost me any money. So I can kind of have a healthy, you know, relationship with it.
They use aren't they? That if you take that, then you can get into much heavier drugs. But you could be drinking and still get into heavier drugs, and then alcohol is even worse. I mean, if they were going to like bring that out now, it'd be a Class A drug. So it's
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for me, it's more like if you think about teenagers or youngsters, as we all were, and that you are experimental, and it's fair to say that if the law forces you to step over the law simply to smoke a little bit of dried leaf, then once you stepped over that law, perhaps you go, in my case, I went, shit, this cannabis isn't so bad. I've been told so many bad things about it. And now here I am smoking. The same with acid. The first time I took acid, it was like, oh my God. 1988 in America. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And it wasn't like I wanted to become an acid head, but it was a realization that shit, there was stuff that I'd never been told about, And it took me until the age of 46, 3.5 years ago, to get to the DMT and realize, oh my God, there's a pineal gland. And again, shit we hadn't been told about, shit that is super important. So, the values of cannabis were known all along. I mean, there's plenty of old newspapers, and we know that, sativas and indicas are found in medicines in every medicine chest. So and then there's this higher consciousness that seems to leak out when you take some good acid, or in the case of the DMT, absolutely explode out of you, and you go, my God, what else are they hiding from us? So this has been part of my own sort of realization along the way that we've been misled, and like most people, it's like, oh yeah, I know about the vaccines, or I know about the cannabis, or I know about this. But I wasn't anywhere near 9/11 up until just four years ago. So in terms of knowing that we were being massively manipulated. So
do you mind if I insert something there as well, Dave? Is when I took my family to Rome, we went to the Vatican, and we went to one of these balconies that overlooked St. Peter's Square, and there was a statue in the middle of this fairly innocuous balcony that was clearly a great big pine cone.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember something I saw, and I can't remember what it was. I think it was one of the more meditation YouTube channels or something like that had shared what the pineal gland was and what it was all about. And this is going back probably about 7 or 8 years now. I remember sharing with my family, this is the pineal gland, and was thinking, yeah, they are clearly knowledgeable about what's what about our consciousness, and they plonk it there without any labels, no plaque, no nothing. It's like there's the signpost that they know. Yes. And it's fascinating.
Yes, well, I mean,
so go ahead.
Yeah, I've come across obviously all the pine cone references and so on, and actually, pine oil, which is turpentine, is very good for cleaning the pineal gland. Would you believe? How's that? But so with my new baby Alexander, with Andrea being over 40, they treated her like she was some kind of alien, and she had to go through loads of scans and stuff like that, the high-end scans at King's Hospital. And when she went to the scans, there were like half a dozen brand new doctors, all brain high-end doctors. And I said to this guy when they were scanning the body, so can you see the pineal gland? Because I didn't know how small it was at that time, but I said, so can you? And he looked at me like I just kind of jumped out of his school book or something, because he was like, oh, you know about that? And so I'd only really asked him to kind of confirm that it was a real thing, that we weren't being fed some other bullshit. He was like, yeah, okay, it's real, it's in there, but you won't be able to see it in your baby, it's far too small.
Crazy.
Pineal gland, and we are I think we are the most incredible receptors or receivers or transmitters or decoders, like that little TV box that you have. I used to have one, but that's what you have, and I think this is what the pineal gland is. And I think that the consciousness is gently eased open with things like cannabis, but when you get into the DMTs and some of these other things, you get the opportunity to kind of see that it's, well, for me anyway, it was my moment that took me from atheist to a believer in a higher source or higher power or greater thing. But that's another story.
Can I ask you a question about frequency? Because there are some YouTube videos that have got tens of millions of hits now, which people must be using for meditation, which are kind of like resonant music with a binaural beat, they call it. Have you heard of that? And it's at a certain frequency.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you had any experience of that, because I've tried listening to a few of those, and they certainly.
I use them all the time. I love them, and sometimes I mean they you get real deep into it, like they totally in a sense hypnotize you. If you're really relaxed. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, I
Fantastic.
can't speak for like I know that there's different frequencies that are better or worse, 432 and 440 hertz and all of that. But if I can just bring what you asked me, but Robin, back to my experience with the DMT, let me just say, because you guys won't all have heard me say this before, but I went into the DMT experience completely unaware of what was about to happen to me. So I had no preconceived notions of what was coming. So I was bashed in the face with this. But within about 30 seconds, 20 seconds of having taken the hit of the DMT, this hum descended on me. And it was just like what I would now describe as like this universal sound. Zzz, like it dropped in on me. Whoa, like zzz, and it stayed there the entire time. My vision was replaced. I could no longer see. I could see around me, but I could no longer see the material things. I could only see them as a wave format. So as much as I might want to resolve the walls or the chairs or the plants or whatever back to their real plant, like as I see them in the 3D world, I could only see them as wave. And it was in conjunction with this hum. So for me, I suffer with tinnitus, and for me, I now realize I think that my tinnitus is what I'm hearing is a little bit of leaking through of the sort of universal vibration, sound or hum that runs this entire thing. And
wow.
I think that's what tinnitus is, because I've wrecked my ears, and so I hear this all the time, right? And I think that our hearing, actually our human hearing, sort of prevents us from hearing a lot of things that are out there. We know we don't see a lot in the spectrum, and we don't hear a lot in the spectrum. And I think that our eyesight limits what we see. Our hearing limits what we hear. But when you bring and introduce some of those things, say for example, the strobing lights of a nightclub combined with other things, that can induce a kind of like a meditative state or a trance state, right? So the same with that kind of sound. I think that can induce, as Astral was saying, calmness and so on. So yeah, I'm with that.
That's fascinating. I do remember a couple of people. One of them who's a proper shill. Joe Rogan had one, and he described his experience. But I also remember that ayahuasca is a little bit similar, isn't it?
Ayahuasca is identical, or let me say that DMT is the main component of ayahuasca, and what they've done is they've synthesized the DMT out in the lab essentially, and so you smoke it and you have this 5 to 10 minute bungee jump event, whereas the ayahuasca is the 4 to 6 hours sort of more leisurely cruise down Mother Nature's,
or even longer.
Yeah.
That's
my next kind of. It's been over 3 years, and you know what? Just for the kind of, I mean, I've been outside of the, although I've kind of gone along with life and what have you, I've been, a naughty kind of kid in my lifetime and stuff like that. But since the DMT, I haven't touched any like drug. I've had half a dozen beers and no cocaine or ecstasy or you name it, no, nothing, and I don't, as I told the coppers the other day, cannabis is not a drug. You guys may want to call it that, but your alcohol that this entire freaking operation runs on, that's a drug. Jeez, I want to get the video footage of me in that charge office, because I ripped the shit out of those sergeants. They try to give me hell, but I gave them stick big time, pulling me into treating the cannabis, Mother Nature's finest plant, I think, perhaps arguably, and treat you like a criminal for dealing with that, or for growing it. So
If I'm,
That's a
if
bit
I'm,
about ironic wording there, Dave, but we know what you meant. You
can
meant
I ask,
that.
can I ask you a question, Dave, about the DMT experience? Because on ayahuasca, you've already made reference to some kind of I don't know, an awakening, a realization, and an adjustment in how you see your life. Do you think you had something similar to what the ayahuasca ceremonies are supposed to give you?
Yes,
So
I did a lot of
okay.
research afterwards, and I very much think so. I was given phenomenal information, Robin. I mean, for me, if that had lasted another 5 minutes, hour, or whatever, that would have been great. I actually did it twice in the one day.
Okay.
And the second time I had to be talked into it. I was so so overwhelmed by the first event.
Wow.
But I you know, the sort of getting, being connected, realizing your connection to all and everything, and that all is love and so on. I was so fully immersed in that.
Okay.
People who had a lot of experience of DMT, and by that I mean 12 trips or 20 trips, something like that's a lot for DMT. They talk about perhaps being able to get through certain gates or doors or levels. So to be fair, I was probably at level 1, maybe level 2. Because I've heard people talk about DMT in less grand terms. To me, it was the most life-changing moment that I've experienced. So my life turned on a pivot in the space of 5 minutes. My dying mother couldn't get me to believe that I needed to have God and all that. She couldn't in 2011. So, here I am in beginning of 2015, still feel the same way. And 5 minutes after this event, I was like, it's real. It's true.
Wow.
There's a God, there's a creator, there's something else. I've been spoken to by some higher power. And I know now that I'm connected to everything. And that everything is love, and that nothing here, things are so transcendent here. There's no death. I lost all fear of death. I'd kind of, at the age of 46, I'd built up a fear of flying and shit like that, and I was in Johannesburg in South Africa at the time. So I got on a flight a few days later, and there was no thoughts of any, fear of any death, other than, you don't want to not get back to your family, because your family want you, and I want to spend more time with my family, of course, but in the sense that, this is impermanent, as I had once believed, that this was a temporary material life and so on. I gained all of that richness in the space of 5 minutes. And I think that the ayahuasqueros, I admire that, and I look forward to doing the longer thing, as frightening as it might be. But I think that in terms of knowing myself, if you hear the best results from ayahuasca, they take these hard case drug users and they give them 3 sessions of ayahuasca. 90% of them never go near their drugs again.
Wow, I can imagine.
It's only the hardest cases they take down to South America, and they give them these treatments, and because once you realize that, you are able to you are able to see past the programming, that we're just these little lucky blobs in the Goldilocks zone. I met a lady just a little while ago, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, and she was just being made homeless. Her house had been on fire, and so the council had put her up in a hotel, and I just happened to park outside of the hotel and got chatting to her while I was waiting for my daughter. And in the space of 15 minutes, I gave this lady enough information. She'd been through the hard knocks of life, right? And I gave her enough information. She was in floods of tears, realizing that she was something far, far greater than anything she'd ever been taught. She was like, please don't forget who I am. Just remember my name. I want you to remember my name, because you've made such a huge difference to my life. And that's something that I can do, having had that experience of what I, and therefore everybody else is, and I never had that before. I was just like everybody else. I don't believe in your religions. I don't believe in this. I was happy to believe in the science, the billions and zillions, and the possibility that there's other life.
So you were trained differently there, weren't you? Because they break down being a whole. They want an individual. They want you to be a whole of something else.
Well, I didn't catch the beginning of that.
I was saying, when being in the military, That's all about breaking down you as a person, as a whole, become part of a team. You know, that's the whole strategy of that, isn't it? So you've already, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have come from that.
Yes, yes. I mean, to an extent, most of us kind of do, you know, to greater or lesser extent. You know, school. I listen to the bells being, you know, the for the young children and so on. You know, we're all being squeezed into the cookie mold. But yeah, that's true. And you know what, Karen, I've been thinking a little bit. My military compadres, my brothers in arms, and all of that over the last little while, because, you know, I've had some travails over this last week, and you know, and not only that, you know, in the last 3 years, because it was about 3 years ago, just less than 3 years ago, that I started telling people about flat Earth, and because it took me at least 9 months to build up the courage, maybe, you know, to build up the courage to actually start telling people about it. And I lost friends from that sort of that military veteran thing, because I'd sort of built up a rapport in the military veteran thing. I had a, you know, a fairly interesting time in the military, as these things go, and so people did like to talk to me about that. And then I started talking about flat Earth, and you know, I have to say that I hope to use my veteran status to talk to army people in future. I sure hope that I can use that. But I have to say that, you know, when in terms of courage, then the people that have been, you know, the order followers, and they've fallen into line and so on, the most are often those that have the least courage when it comes down to standing aside from, you know, standing alone. And I'm sure most of the folks, all of the folks on this panel, will feel the same, and many of the people listening, and that, you know, if you walk this road, you're actually, the whole point is actually you're going to have to walk this road on your own. Although I want to work in activism, and in, you know, making humanity a better humanity, I want to work with every brother and sister that I can reach. I know now that I had to get to this point on my own. There's no team that's going to get you to this point. You know, no book and no club and no imam or leader or professor is gonna get you there. You have to do it on your own. I don't know that it has to be that your fucking family all disown you and, you know, I don't want to help you out of the shit and stuff like that. You know, I don't know. Maybe it has to be that kind of trial by fire. But it certainly suits the system to have us all in boxes. And of course, the more you've been in the military, and these lads I just encountered here in the police force, you know, the more time you spent in that kind of order following thing, then I think it's just a whole lot harder for you to kind of break away from that and stand on your own. But I had to do that. I mean, and I'd gotten soft. I'd spent 15 years, maybe a little longer than that, working for the local government here in London. Regular salary, slowly working my way up, not very popular at times, because, you know, I was always trying to agitate for change and make things different. So the senior management didn't love me, but you know, it was a soft way, and you were in a thing and you just went along with it and so on. And that was actually how it was all going to play out for me. I think I was going to head towards retirement like that. And then my mom went up and got motor neuron disease and died in 7 months. And just going back in the trenches in 2011 kickstarted everything that has me here today.
Oh, wow.
Hi, here you go.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with us. Sorry about some of it.
So you know what? My mother's death, for example, is, yeah, I love my mother. She was, you know, if you know, I adored my mother, although she and I didn't see eye to eye on many things, and religion was one of them, and so on. But her death was the catalyst for me, you know. And now I think that there is no death. I see that there is no death, so I know that my mum's not dead. And who knows, she may be even reincarnated, but I know that she's not dead. In fact, when I had the DMT, when I started the DMT trip, 30 seconds, I had the most frightening time. For 30 seconds, I was in a rictus of fear, curled up like a baby, just screaming uncontrollably. And then I heard my mother's voice behind me. I felt like it was my mother's voice. So for me, this is all what makes us who we are, and the ability to come through that and find the way. I mean, the story about how my wife and I have survived the last 3 years, financially and so on, is just one where you have to, why the religious people, oh, you just need to, pray to God and he'll provide. Well, maybe there's something in that, but or the universe or the whatever, that there's a way through, and it's about having that faith, and my wife and I have gone, okay, it's rent day today and we still don't have the money. We don't have any of the money. So how's it going to work out, and this is how it's been going at times. It's not always been that tight, but it's been that close to being tight for the last 3 or 4 years, at least, maybe longer. And, and a bunch of other travails. And of course, people around the world, across the plains, are, having their own journeys that bring them there, whether it be, in my case, through a military thing, or in other cases, they're bringing people, everyone's got their thing, that without that thing, they wouldn't have kind of jumped, they wouldn't have gotten out of the box. They wouldn't have stepped out of line and said, no, enough, or this is how it has to be because of the experiences that I've had, So I'm really grateful for the experiences that I've had. Some of them have been, I mean, my wife and I were apart for 8 years. Would you believe it? We've, so, and then that was a horrible time for everyone, including my children. But here we are now, and we're in this. We're alive, more alive now than we've ever been, and I'm so grateful to be in this opportunity, to have this opportunity, and to be in this life, and to be a participant, rather than sitting in front of my telly and just waiting for them to tell me what to think and do next. I've never been more sure of myself. I trust my instincts. I want to share. Just, I'm sorry to be hogging the air here, but I want to share something that just popped into my mind earlier today. The police who did the raid on my place had done they'd done some intelligence beforehand, so they knew that my morning routine was typically had become, over the last few weeks, to take my oldest son, drop him off at school, come home, and then go for an hour-long walk with Alexander before going off to work or whatever the day held, right? But on this morning, on Tuesday, the 18th, I decided for some reason to go early at about 6:45 in the morning, and so that threw the police off, because when I finally, about an hour and a half later, climbed over the fence of the golf course that I'd been walking around, there had been a very misty, foggy morning, and so it meant I could stay on this golf course for all that time. And I'd been collecting golf balls that we found in the bush and whatnot. I had about 20 golf balls in my pocket. I think the police thought I was carrying a whole stash that I'd picked up. But the point of this is that because I'd changed my routine and only got back home at like 8:30. My oldest son was already at school, and he's a beautiful boy. My oldest son is a beautiful boy. He has a mild case of autism, and he doesn't handle certain kinds of stress very well. And hell, man, if he'd had to be put through that stress on Tuesday morning, it would have been one of the shittest parts of the entire thing, if not the shittest part of the entire thing. My wife was very strong, and my baby boy doesn't really clock any of this stuff yet. So that my 17-year-old boy wasn't here that morning, because they would have snapped him up. They would have said, yes, you can stay in the room, and it would have freaked him out. He's the kind of guy who, if you put him in an exam situation, he will crumble. And and so I just wanted to share that, because what told me to go walking early that morning, and I listened to the voice. I don't know what, but I listen to the voice now, because I'm hearing myself. I'm not saying I'll get everything right. I'm not a perfect man or anything like that, but I know that the more and I was totally atheist. I've told you that. I was fucking against anything. Excuse my language. I was against anything to do with anything like that. totally burnt my fingers. The war that I was in, I was like, how can humans be killing each other like we do and there be a God? That was where I was at, yeah. And I suppose if you're a scientist, you're like, how can there be a God when we can show we've got Big Bang and we've got this and we've got that and we've got that, you know? So I was happy with that. But the more I get into this kind of spiritual connection with the higher source, the whatever we got, then so the more beautiful my life becomes and the more meaningful my life becomes. And I move away from, and this is what I talk on, is about, you know, how we men have been.
It makes you feel more at peace, doesn't it?
Pardon me?
It makes you feel more at peace.
Truly. And I mean, you know, I could be quite angry. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't had anger vis-a-vis, you know, the home invasion earlier this week and so on. But I chose this path, you know. I chose for this to happen in a way. I mean, in the story about how I befriended the 22-year-old lad who I think is somehow, not that I'm saying he intended for this to happen, but I think he's the way it became a problem for me. But I think that I see the spiritual value or the growth value in this, you know. Yes, they took 20 odd ounces or whatever it was going to be when it was dried, and it's going to cost me a good few £1,000s to smoke this year when it shouldn't have cost me anything. And my wife has had to endure her house being ransacked by you know, people, and having you know plastic policemen sit and watch over her like she's some kind of criminal and shit like that. But you know, this is the path that we're on. You know, I chose not to kind of sit in the box and go, all right, Mr. Plod, and you know, the funny wig wearing dude down at the Parliament, you know, you can tell me how I should live my life. No way. You know, the more spiritual I become, the more clear that I am, you know, that us humans have all of the knowledge, all of the ability, all of the love, or the, you know, the right stuff to raise ourselves to be, you know, much higher living souls and much higher living beings. And perhaps in doing that, eventually we bring about
You mean our consciousness on a higher level?
Yeah. I mean, if I just speak for myself, then my dealings with my fellow man become more enriching for me and them. And you know, my willingness to kind of help the old lady down the road, for example, like today, she was desperate for someone to hang out with, and I was tired. I was like, shit, I don't know, I can't do it. And then I called her up afterwards because she came banging on my door. I called up afterwards. I said, okay, I've got an hour. I can give you an hour of my time, you know. And you just want to be a better person all round, you know, as much as you can. And you know, it's
maybe you talk to her like she was a human being, and people.
Oh, she loves hanging out with me because I just, you know, she has dementia, so she says things so many times over and over and over. But I'm just, you know, I'm at that point where I don't need to judge that. I was feeling a little judgmental of the, you know, the neighborhood. It's a weird thing, you know, because once you've had the police vans outside of your house and you've had the you know, I didn't want to give them any authority to come into my house, by the way. So I told them I didn't recognize their authority, and I didn't recognize the scrappy piece of paper that they showed me that they said was some court warrant, right, or whatever, search warrant. But before they kind of established their authority over me, they then gone and knocked on the door, and I tried to, you know, refuse them entry, and got my hands put in cuffs.
Oh.
So the neighbors, you know, they see all of this stuff goes around, I'm sure, like wildfire in the neighborhood. And I do feel a sense of, you know, I've worked quite hard to be in my neighborhood, and I do feel a sense of people are, you know, passing judgment because, you know, once the police turn up, that could be for any reason, you know. And you know, I could well be dealing drugs to minors at the school, you know, at the schoolyard or something like that, you know. The mind boggles as to what the possibilities are. So, you know, and I think that, you know, when you realize that actually the depth of our relations with each other are fairly surface or superfluous in some cases, and I know I'm being a little bit pessimistic here, but you start to wonder, you know, what a difference one light can truly make. But I guess I'm just feeling a little bit down on things on that. But I won't. I would say that despite that, you know, the sort of heaven on earth idea is I think a possibility. You know, the idea that if you if you can raise your sort of energies beyond the material stuff of the, you know, the bling and the clubbing and the drugging and all of that sort of thing, perhaps then you can start to find a higher place for yourself. And, you know, in the Bible, they talk about, you know, you know, if you don't believe in Jesus or whatever, you can't go to heaven and all that sort of thing. But I think that if you believe in yourself, perhaps you can find this heaven here, you know, and this is really all we know. Hey, I mean, I'm willing to speculate a lot about the you know, spirit realms and so on. I know there's a lot out there, but there's very little that I could, or nothing at all that I can actually prove. What I can prove is what we have here, and I can prove that in my own lifetime and in my own experience that, you know, I have lived in the Sodom and Gomorrah kind of lower energies. And if you look at the chakra chart, you know, the lower energies are the brown and dark colors down at the root chakra. Not that I've got a problem with the root chakra, or just the higher energies, the lighter energies, as Astral's thumbnail will show you, the lighter, the blues and the purples and so on. These are the energies that we should be emitting and radiating and so on. And I think that a lot of that is held back by the TV and the diets and the, you know, the mind control and so on. And the willingness to kind of stay in the greed paradigm, in the money and the me. So, you know, I mean, whether or not the game is ever meant to change, like that humanity in some way is going to have a wholesale upliftment, or whether there's going to be some event that forces humanity back down again. I
Do you know
don't
what it's about? Listen, you have to find you. There has to be a you and a me. But once you get to that, then you can start becoming a whole with everyone else. And that's the bit that people don't seem to understand. It was so that we could somehow, because telepathically almost, you know, on the Hangouts, we feel each other. You know, we know things. We can feel things.
You know, I mean, one of the things that kind of has me a little vexed is the issue of to do with ego, Karen, to do with the way that when you wander around Speaker's Corner and you see how entrenched people are in their belief system, and then even as we found here in Flat Earth awareness, is that, you know, people then get a model in their minds, or they get a leader in their head, you know, or you know, some idea, and they want
to remain open. You still have to remain open.
We do, but we're so well programmed for team choosing, you know, like taking sides and so on, and so, you know, that seems to me to be even, you know, still a problem that you see with people that have found that the Earth is flat. So we do need to do, I think, more than stop at flat Earth, and this is where I kind of started realizing about a year and a half in, at the end of 2016, I thought that, you know, things weren't really going anywhere. You know, we were still talking about flat Earth, and then, you know, my wife was pregnant, and so my focus was on baby and stuff like that, because he was born early in 2017, and but the whole time I was like, you know, after I'd gotten over the flat Earth, I started realizing that there has to be more. We're just not going to be heard if all we talk about is flat Earth. And where are we going to grow to if we get to this flat Earth card on the Illuminati deck, which is apparently worth 2 points or something like that. The flat Earth is known as something, but they don't know everything. And who knows if we ever get to know everything, but I'm fairly certain from my DMT experience and all the research I've done regarding that, and the other things that pertain to the flat Earth and the centralization of this, and anyone who's still into their mainstream science will know that there's a thing called the W map. I sometimes talk to people about this. The W map has been done since 2009, and it's a background radiation chart survey that's done by somebody. And they can't help themselves but find that Earth is at the center of whatever creation we live on. So once you kind of put all of that together, you realize that, shit, we must be super, super important. In fact, the DMT, by the way, Robin, the DMT trip showed me that, and, my experience was that would have been, if anyone else would have had the same kind of knowledge, they would have gained the same knowledge. So I'm not suggesting that I'm different from anyone else, but I realized in that experience that I was extremely powerful. I don't mean in the human form. I mean beyond the human form, that I'm connected to, I'm part of some extremely powerful entity. And it's been one of the main motivating factors that has taken me along this journey of saying no more. I was born in the UK, and I could have possibly escaped national service. I did my army in South Africa because, I grew up there, and I felt like a South African kid, and I had all the South African propaganda. Not that I wanted to do national service, but I had no choice. It was a matter of law, and I went ahead and got stuck in and did my thing. And then because I was a naughty kid, I got sent on one of the worst possible places for my second year in the army, and we just happened to be involved in major tank battles in that time. And where was I going on my point with that? My point is that I went along with it. And then I came to this country at the age of 23, 24, 25, and kind of went along with it, and even worked for the local government. And then I had this DMT experience, and it showed me unequivocally how powerful and how important we are. And since then, I don't give queens and others, any sort of superiority above me. And I don't mean that in an egoist way. I don't mean to be arrogant, and I don't mean to be, putting myself above anybody else. But at the same time, I'm not going to stand idly by and allow organizations and status quo to, insert itself above us. I think that if we've learned anything, that we're meant to be making change happen here. We're meant to be bringing about some kind of change, and I can't speak, I don't, as I said, I don't know that it's a wholesale change. I'm not making predictions about that. I have to start with me and within myself, and, what change comes in my lifetime and what change I can bring to my children and those around me. Well, we'll see.
Well, Stacey likes what you're saying because she's just subbed to you, Trinity 4.
Thanks, Stacey.
Sorry, Roger, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say those that I've heard doing DMT and ayahuasca ceremonies have usually come through some huge self-reflection moment where it's almost like they see a replay of their life and all the things that are causing challenge or difficulty or problems, and it's like a revelation, almost like being born again. Like, I guess the Christian experience is possibly a bit like that, where you have to kind of walk forwards with full revelation of what life is, and you can't unsee that. So you have to, by very definition, it's almost impossible not to correct certain ways that you think and that you act, because you've seen too much, if you like. You've seen the truth, and it's almost impossible. And for those that go through the ayahuasca experience, it can actually be physically painful as well. So not sure how that relates. Maybe it's just something, the nature chemically of the plant, but the shape. the shamans have to supervise you, don't they? If you're doing it correctly, you respect the plant and you respect the ceremony, and you do it with reverence.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Have you seen the ceremony that they do with the shamans in the rainforests, taking all day, and they purge their bodies, don't they? Most of them, when they have taken this brew, they purge the bodies, and they can be throwing up for quite some time. Seeing all sorts of dark figures and things, and I mean, it's not a happy, pleasant experience, but at the end of it, everyone is very grateful for it. They're very happy that they've done it. Even years later, they're just still. Sting did it, didn't he? Out of the police, apparently. I mean, okay.
Yeah, no. It is for me a transformatory experience, and when I came out of one of the very first things I said is that everybody should know about this, and at the age of 16 you should be or 13 or whatever, you should be offered this as a rite of passage, because if you truly want to know who and what you are, then for me there's never been anything that's come close to. No movie I ever watched, no nothing, no dream I ever had, no story I ever heard told had ever prepared me for what I encountered with the DMT. And in fact, I know that through my religious indoctrination that I was discouraged very much from ever exploring that part. And it's ironic because it's the thing that has made me a better man than anything else I've ever done.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And, I'm so grateful for having had that awakening, and I would just implore people to look into it. There is that documentary called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, on YouTube. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. It covers the only legal study that was gifted by the American government in 1997. I watched that documentary, but it didn't prepare me for what the encounter that I had. I have to say it's nothing. But it is that fundamental. It is, in fact, the very reason why the controllers of this game don't want us to see that is because if everybody saw that, then the game would be over straight away.
Well, it's like you say, it's a good fundamental. It's a good little teacher because it opens your mind to. Just the thought of this plant down in the jungle. Let's drink it. They've been drinking it for centuries, if not millennia. Who knows? Mixing it with, there's a process. The reason why they have to mix it with something else is to break down something within our stomachs that would also break down the DMT. So nothing would happen to us if we just drank it, unless we mixed it with this other brew. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Sorry, guys. You go on.
No, that's cool. I mean, I think you're right. I forget sometimes that people don't know everything because I know this stuff, but I let it all go, and it's definitely I couldn't recommend looking into these things highly enough. I only recommend them in the most sincere and revered kind of terms of truly getting to understand your nature. And having a connection with the higher power, with Mother Nature, with God, that is so fundamental to what and who you are. And it's for me the richest experience that I've had, and I would, as I said, it's been 3 years, but I think that I'm ready to try it, go again and get a little bit more information or find some more information. Not that I have to go, but because as I said, I got offered to do it a third time. I don't know if I said that, but it was a struggle to get me to do it a second time, and then the next day I was offered it a third time. I was like, no.
There is something that you could look into if you're interested in ayahuasca, because they've decriminalized all drugs in Portugal, and apparently, and I spoke to someone who's been to Portugal. He was from Brazil, but he'd been to Portugal and done it in Portugal, so he knows firsthand, and he told me firsthand that you can do it there, and it's legal. There's no You know, there is no
Oh, yeah,
harm
yeah,
in
yeah,
in
yeah.
anything. So he's done this like ayahuasca with a shaman and everything. You know, it's not
Yeah.
quite the same as the jungle, but
No, there is
it's intense. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there are a few. In fact, there's a few in the UK. It's not legal in the UK, but it's legal in quite a few European countries, including Switzerland. And there's a company called Ayahuasca English that are on Facebook. I'm not recommending them. I'm just saying that's one I was looking at after I started doing the research. I was sort of in touch with them, and I was hoping I'd have the money sometime to go. And you know, I've heard quite good things, but one or two sort of negative comments. So I'm just saying there are people out there that are bringing shamans over from South America, and they're doing these ceremonies. And actually, in America, they've got a group have got a license as a church, because it's kind of like a religious thing. So because the American authorities were trying to ban it, from what I know, this church is still running, but you know how the Americans are pretty draconian as well about all this.
Last time I was on, Karen, I mentioned a flat earther who runs an anarchist conference in Mexico called Anarchapulco, and it's a 2 to 3 week conference that I think the week after is all about cryptocurrency, and the week before is actually they split into two strands, parallel running, and one of those strands is actually a ayahuasca ceremony and iboga, and on the other strand was health and wellness. So it's, if you really wanted to take a month out of your life, it's probably one of the biggest like plug into your community as you could possibly imagine, because there's about 2,000 people that go, and then all the speakers that speak are people that not necessarily flat earth, but all about cognitive liberty, you know, getting your life straight and doing the best thing for you, sovereign, you know, personal sovereignty, how to disrupt, you know, in the business world and become have your own self-determination in business and in life and in your family, in personal security and in money and in food and in health and all of these things. And yeah, that's one of my ambitions, is to get to Anarchapulco if I can, because what a month that would be. Like, unbelievable.
I used to listen to that guy who runs that. What's his name again?
Jeff Berwick.
Berwick, yeah. I used to listen to him, and is he Flat Earth? Did he?
He is, yeah. He's got 2 YouTube channels. In fact, I think he's got 3. There's one called Anarchast, which is all about the anarchist mindset, and Eric Dubay has been on that one about 2 years ago. And then he's got his own personal one, Jeff Berwick, where he just takes the dogs out for a walk. And I can't remember how many followers he had, at least 100,000. And he said, right guys, I'm gonna spill the beans. Right, the earth is flat. You're gonna have to get over it. Some of you are gonna hate me, but you have to look into it, because by the time you finish looking into it, you'll agree with me. And I know some of you are already throwing your tea across the floor. But yeah, he's great to listen to, because he's so switched on, both in business, in life. You know, he's figured his life out, and he's gone through you know, using alcohol and tobacco quite heavily, and being almost in a permanent state of depression for 4, 5, 6 years at least. And he's gone through a personal journey in the last year where he's just coming off of that stuff and having fruit smoothies every day. And he's gone vegan, I think, now. And he's now, you know, into distilled water, and he's into meditation and taking supplements. And by the time, and I've watched him in the last 2, 3 years change big time.
Maybe I need to give him another listen, because I'd kind of switched off for the reasons that I was moving on from the things that he was talking about and into wanting to move into the deeper kind of stuff behind all of that. And you know, one of the things that still kind of vexes me, actually, Robin, is the stock market and that system. One of the clearest messages I got on the DMT was how that stuff was going down like on the second trip that I had the DMT, I had such clear visions of the banking. It was more than HD, super HD, and all these banks and casinos were just going down into this big black hole in my chest. And it was an interesting thing because, you know, not that I'm a, you know, not that I am a pusher of the Bible, but I do know that there's a lot of good information in that book, and I accept that what this Christ story is telling us about the capitalism and the money side of things and so on is that whilst I wouldn't mind having, you know, my own house and a little bit of land and, you know, a car and this and that and so on and so on, I feel like if I put my energy into things that are contributing towards systems that are our enslavers, then I'm still party to that. And like I know, as tempting as it is to get into Bitcoin, or may have been once upon a time, it's like it's a dichotomy, and I'm not you know, I'm not saying, oh, people shouldn't be investing their money and so on, and shouldn't be looking after their finances. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. But I am, you know,
I
I'm
know what you're
cautious
saying.
about who I put my energy to in terms of that. And if, you know, maybe I'll listen again. But, you know, Jeff, for me, was like one of those people who's, okay, so what you've done is you found like a loophole where you can continue being a profiteering, you know, greedy capitalist, but doing it on you know, selling like green freaking vegan products. Well, that doesn't cut
Okay.
it for me.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think the term anarcho-capitalist is something that actually resonates for me because it's about being disruptive and trying to pull down the central banking system, and in return find a way that cuts out centralization of things. So I was saying on the last hangout, personal security and personal safety has been resolved in several towns in Mexico where they have two solutions. One is private security run by a company that is hired by one of the bigger businesses in the area, and the guys on the street have trained to disarm and calm things down in a very human way. So if they come across a guy who looks a bit shifty, looks like he might be stealing or wanting to steal, they'll catch him up and talk to him in a really human to human way and get him to go on his way without feeling like he's been, you know, strong armed and patted down and so on. And what happens is the crime rate goes to zero. And also they had an app which has been developed, which is essentially me broadcasting to my favorite 10 people who will come at a moment's notice if I'm in trouble. So the app just sends an SOS to 10 loving people that rush to help me and then does away with the need for police. So what those two solutions offer is a community-based solution that doesn't need any government, any police, and any enforcement of any sort.
That's cool.
And those ideas to me are anarcho-capitalists. Yes, they earn money because everyone needs to buy the app, but it's an exchange for me. It's an exchange of value. So if I'm serving the community in a way that maintains natural law, so you keep your sovereignty, I keep mine, and we don't do each other any harm, then for me, I can't dislocate myself totally with an exchange of money, because right now that's the unit we have. But I'm sure if you talk to Jeff Berwick, he would love to see a barter system where it's an exchange of services. You know, we don't need the money, but we'll say, okay, 2 hours of my time is 3 hours of yours, or X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. However, we agree that that's an exchange of value. But yeah, that's why I like him, because he's definitely changed.
What would be nice? I think the thing that's happened is that the only thing that seems important is money, when it should be that the people are important and money is money. But it's not.
Yeah.
Money is the most important thing. So that it'd be nice even if we could shift it that the people are the most important thing.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I want to just, if I can just build on the back of what you were just saying, Robin. Now, I think again, I'll say stress that perhaps I need to give Jeff a second shot. But when I think about how Napster, for example, was used to open the door to online file sharing, and then the electronic era that came from it, I now think that a character like Napster is very easily, someone who's set up to create the noise, to create the momentum and the energy and so on. And just in the same way as, for example, they will have cannabis stories in the newspaper now for the next few years about how cannabis is good, and slowly they will bring about that status change where the same people are in control, but they've managed to move us without too much complaint from going, cannabis is bad for you, we're going to bang all your boys up for doing it, to oh yeah, cannabis is damn good for you, and our overpaid drug dealers called doctors and pharmacists will provide it for you now. And I think that what my concern with Bitcoin and other blockchain products was that no freaking ways are you going to get me to believe that this has just come out of some Japanese guy's playbook or whatever they're trying to tell us, right? About how this blockchain comes to be. No ways. Everything that has ever happened to us, everything that has ever been designed, from the television to this mobile phone that I'm talking to you from, has been designed with foresight and forethought and so on. So that the idea that we weren't always going to move towards a delimited or deconstructed kind of electronic system of coinage has been on the cards for a long time, right? So anyone kind of coming out and going, oh look, we're just promoting my coin and this way. Well, why not have them look like Jeff Berwick? Why not have them be the people who are bringing in the new system, be the people that people can attach to. And I mean no disrespect to Jeff here. I'm not but for me it was like, if you're not able to move the conversation on from the kind of the nuts and bolts of this truth into, hey, what does it mean for us as a species, as creation and so on, then that's where that's
you're quite right, Dave, because you've heard of Zbigniew Brzezinski, right?
Yeah.
He wrote The Grand Chessboard, and he also wrote a book called The Age of the Technotronic Era or something like that. Perhaps someone can Google it, but he was in the late 80s writing down the blueprint for a complete totalitarian electronic system, the Technotronic Age, he called it. And I can see that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if you read the those in the Christian world who try and pull the strands out of the Book of Revelation, you'll see that there was these 10-headed monster. I forget what it's called now. 10-headed beast system. That's right, the beast system, which you could perhaps say was the monetary system, or countries coming under one banner. And I can't really talk with authority about that, but it's certainly been coming a long time. It wasn't like people like Zbigniew Brzezinski didn't want it to happen. I think at best Jeff Berwick is jumping on the bandwagon. Sorry, at worst he's jumping on the bandwagon, and at best he just hasn't looked that deeply into it. I mean, he is very awake though. If you listen to him make comment on a lot of his guests' interviews, you can tell he's really he studied it enough to know what government is and what money is and all these things.
No,
definitely.
About a year. Don't get me wrong. He's very intelligent, very But I sometimes think about this about myself now. I'm trying to emerge as a voice in this community, and because I feel like I have something to contribute, something to say. But I also know that by putting my energy into something that the system I think wants to come out, i.e. the flat Earth, then I am inadvertently, working toward the system's aims. In the same way as a well-meaning Christian vicar or lay preacher or whatever goes about in his parish or her parish and does, you know, I mean, I grew up around Christians and people trying their hardest to get me to sort of join the fold in a way that I would go out and I'd have people come and, you know, spread their good word with me, and they were doing it with absolute fervor. And they could have been the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Muslims from down the road, same fervor.
Yeah.
You know, and these people are not doing it because, you know, they think what we think, and that it's some sort of Freemasonic control system and so on. They're not doing it because they want to help the Freemason thing or the whatever it is that runs this thing. They're not
Yeah,
doing
it's sincere. Misplaced sincerity, perhaps, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you know, so most of us are, you know, so a character like Jeff or any other character, including myself, could be, you know, doing what we're doing with the best of heart, but not realizing that actually our good energy is being exploited to bring a you know, a group of cattle along a particular path. So
yeah, I once picked up a brochure for Dos Bank. Is a bank in Bristol that's branded as the ethical bank, and I looked at all its company values, and I was looking at things like it has a mandate for social enterprise. It has a mandate for green values. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm in. And then I went down to the bottom of the brochure and it said, underwriters, Rockefeller Bank. I forget which one it was now. JP Morgan or something. JP Morgan Chase. And I thought, I had to throw in the towel. Can't find one.
I don't know 100% for sure, but there's not many banks that aren't operated by that family.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they all actually operate under license by the Bank of International Standards, so international settlements in Basel. You know, it's like I say now that government is a franchise. Well, banking is the same. It's a franchise, and you only get to be there by permission, and you've got to come in with a good amount of money, and you've also got to be willing to agree to change your colors at a moment's notice, or to remodel if you need to, or get rid of a few, or start a war, or whatever. This is the deal. But whilst you kind of, you know, you're running the show, you can, you know, do local shit as much as you like and what have you. You just got to pay your subscription fees to BIS or whoever runs the show. I wanted to say, Robin, actually on that green agenda, I had to smile yesterday. I was driving through central London and saw a new petrol garage. You might have heard of it, called Apple Green.
Okay.
Apple Green petrol station. I thought that's probably BP or Shell. They've just started up a subsidiary, and you know they're tapping into that kind of idea.
It's organic gas.
Organic dinosaurs.
I know. I wanted to touch on the. So if you see something that's a lie on television, and then you go to work and say, you know, you start talking about it with people, or whatever, you're perpetrating the lie, and that are we flat earthers perpetrating? I wanted to. Are we helping the agenda? That's kind of where I was going with that.
I think about this a lot, my friend. I think about this a lot.
And is that classified as is that classified as a kind of perjury in a sense? Is it
culpable?
Culpable.
It's the Milgram. It's the Stanley Milgram experiment, isn't it? We're saying you didn't answer the question. You get an electric shock. Why? Because that's the rules of the game. Sorry, culpable now.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't kill him. I just tied him up.
Yeah. I just got the guy next to me said, "Ask the question."
No, I didn't kill him. I didn't kill him. I just sold them the rope they used. Don't blame me.
To tie him up.
That's the way that they compartmentalize it. So when you're doing your little piece, you're not doing the whole thing, you know. You're just doing that little bit. So you don't need to feel bad about providing them with the knives and the ropes and the things that they use to cut, you know, do all of it.
It could also be as bad as that. Well, I just built the garage that he was killed in.
Oh, that's best.
Yeah.
So culpable.
Yeah, no, we are invariably, but I mean, you know, we've been doing that. If you're a school teacher and you're clinging to the fact that to the science you were taught, or the geography or the history or whatever, you don't want to accept that. But it's something that we have to be willing to look at, you know, in ourselves, because we've all, in one way or another. I mean, I brought my older children up on a molten core 4,000 miles beneath our feet. You know, I brought them up on that bullshit. So I was shilling for that, and then of course if you're in
Right.
one of these other various groups, you'll be shilling for their thing, and then after the first year and a bit in the flat Earth, I started wondering whether I wasn't shilling for the azimuthal equidistant map and model. So I started moving away from that. But
I want
to be
you.
specific.
I want to make us all feel a little bit better. I don't know if you saw Geraldine talk with Jason and Harry yesterday on the streets. She said, we're the ones who have the first chance. We're the first generation to have the chance to spread this truth. So we mustn't beat ourselves up. I mean, the awakening has happened because people like Eric Dubay decided to create some content, and we're here now as a result of that. And we mustn't beat ourselves up because we're the first generation. And my son is currently 22 years old. He's in Bali. He's trying to create a business. I'm so proud of him. He's resisted flat Earth. I keep showing him the moon, X, Y, and Z. He's heard all the arguments, but he's told me today, yesterday, I had a quick flick at your channel yesterday, Dad. Looks great. He said, I said, that's brilliant, mate. Tell me if you found the curvature. He said, actually, there's quite a few woke people out here. There's quite a few flat earthers. So I'm delighted because I know he's in an entrepreneurial world at the moment. There's loads of young business folk in the tech space, and there's quite a few wide awake guys out there.
Excellent.
So proud of him. Yeah, I think he stands pretty zero chance of staying a Glober by the time he comes back.
Okay, but whatever because we could speculate about how, whether this was a controlled leak or an accidental thing, or whether it's intended to grow at 1% a year or 5% a year or whatever. I think that we know that the people running the shop are seeing us and watching us and keeping an eye on every step that the group or the noise makes. So it's hard not to think that this isn't intended. So when I think that, I think, okay, so how have they, for example, in South Africa, where we went from, a totally racist situation where the black folks were treated terribly, to a totally racist situation where both black and white people are treated terribly, but under a black government rather than a white government. And how did we do that? And they had to do that. They had to bring a credible character into the play, someone who saw it from both sides. Nelson Mandela. And he was then, after a few years of PR, he was then the perfect dude to the white people felt like, yeah, he's going to be all right for us. And of course, the black folk were like, dude, our king has come. And a little bit like Obama, he failed pretty miserably to put things right. But again, he's on the franchise. Now, I think the same is true. I've been saying this on cannabis. I think that probably what they've done in Canada and other places is they've started to bring in over the last 10 years politicians who were soft on cannabis, who were keen on cannabis coming out. And so that the electorate continue to have someone to believe in, even when they go, okay, so I try and bring this to people's attention whenever I can, but, the same people who are telling you it's okay to smoke it now were putting you in jail and telling you it was very bad for you just a few years ago, despite knowing that. So why are you allowing them? But because it's Justin Trudeau or some other youngster who has he smoked a few joints himself and he's cool about it and so on. So we forgive the past and we allow for a new regime, but it's the same bloody old crowd, right, of clubs. So why not the same with the flat earth, that if you give it 15, 25 years, something like that, and you slowly let the air out of the balloon, that eventually there won't be, say, someone like me, for example, I go, oh, fuck this, I'm going to stand for politics. Okay, I won't get into politics because I swear too much, but someone like me goes and says, oh yeah, the earth is flat, and I'm in politics and I'm talking for that, right? So give me 5 years or 10 years in the opposition, and eventually, oh yeah, we've got a flat earth government now, we're going to be a flat earth partner. So they would allow that growth to happen, so that eventually the mass of the flock would just go, yeah, okay, tick box, all right, it's flat, and we'll just vote for the Tories again, right, or the Labours. and I'm mindful that if that's how we become, if that's how the movement goes, then we will basically play into the hands of the system and say, yes, well, all right, we'll move to a flat Earth model and so on, but we'll just carry on letting you call the shots and telling how to live and so on. And I feel like that would be their ideal scenario, is that they're able to move, because when they hid the flat Earth, they surely didn't think that they had 400 or 500 years that they'd be able to pull this lie off. And so I think that they eventually knew that the truth would have to out some way. And when they did, they couldn't allow it to out in a single event, because the cataclysm that would come from that would be too significant. And they wouldn't be able to control that. It's like if you've ever handled sheep on a sheep farm, as I have, then you can't let the whole flock go. You have to let 1-2 go at a time through the gate. Otherwise, it's a melee, and it's sheep get hurt and the fences get trummeled. And so I think that they want perhaps this to come out, but they want it to come out in a controlled way, and they want it to come out in such a way that they continue to have their own new world order, their own control system sit above that. So that's my thoughts on that. And I think if I do anything as I go forward, it'll be to try and avoid people becoming complacent. Because it's the same with the cannabis thing in Canada. In America, it's like, oh yeah, thank the government for fucking giving us permission to and in the American example, it's still pretty draconian. It's like, it has to be, each seed has to be barcoded, and from the moment that seed is grown to the time it's smoked, basically the government wants to keep an eye on it. I mean, and that's insanity. And I think that it should be the case that any government that has stood for the prohibition of cannabis should have no legitimacy, no moral standing whatsoever. And then what they're going to do is they're going to slowly drag their heels until eventually people go, yeah, we'll allow the government to continue to kind of stay in charge, and now to kind of tax us and so on and so on. I've said enough, but there you go.
I kind of agree with just one thing though. The globe is a lie, and whatever it is, it's a round, flat Earth realm is the truth. We're not moving.
Yeah. I would also bring everyone's countries. We had Tunisia. You're going to have to help me now. I can't remember them all. They had Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, maybe. There was 4 or 5 countries that just toppled really quickly in succession. I think that was because the people just had enough. They had enough of food prices going up and dominant, abusive leaders. Now, I know that some of this was potentially sponsored with Muslim Brotherhood sponsorship. I know there's infiltration and proxy wars, but I still felt there was a huge uprising and sentiment here, which was unstoppable. And I think I agree that good, and they don't seem to be doing it in extreme measure, which they certainly could if they want to. But I think that if there's enough awareness, you might actually get that Arab Spring effect. So I don't know whether that's a violent one or whether it's just a protest and we tear down the universities or get them to start again. But yes, there's certainly got to be some fessing up.
I wrote to the, sorry to cut you off there, Robin. I wrote to the people when the Arab Spring happened. I wrote to the Facebook group that had been set up in the light of that, and I wrote to them with a message of support, and I had a reply back from them and so on. And I now think that that Arab Spring was more than likely, like every other movement, controlled. Remember when I was in Angola in 1987, we had the CIA not alongside us, but alongside the rebels that we were fighting with. And so we know that Egypt and the North African region is extremely important. And we, I don't know some of the occultist stuff, of course, but I think it's an extremely important area. I think that I see unrest amongst the populace of every region that I speak the language of. I mean, and that's mostly just English, but but all English speaking, like Australia, South Africa, you know, what I see in the European story, is a lot of dissatisfaction with the status quo. Everybody's aware of that, and I think that the system had either didn't have any option, but or it is the reality that people have been pushed. The finance, there's more poverty, there's more corruption, there's less stability. I think that the world is a much less generous, warm, loving.
Yeah, nobody cares, nobody wants to help, and nobody thinks they're responsible for anything.
Mm-hmm. So if we're going to see insurrection of the sort that is violent, then I think the system would be very pleased to receive that. And I don't think that a lot of people would turn up for that match, actually. I think people are more inclined to a little bit of peaceful protest, and we saw it with the so-called Million Man March in the run-up to the Second Gulf War, where Tony Blair plain-faced lied to us about the 45 weapons of mass destruction, which I bought at the time. I was in support of the war, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd had these Iraqi refugees.
They changed the law, didn't they? So that the government of the day almost wasn't responsible for any wars they caused. That's what all 9/11 was about.
Yeah. Well, that's right. It gave them the kind of, and it did. It changed the mood in the world, didn't it? And it really allowed for. And I was buying into the propaganda of hook, line, and sinker then. So it kind of allowed for that mindset of, we have to do something to stop this. But they knew all along that what they were doing was they were agitating. Aside from it's the oil and it's the opium and it's this and that, but they were agitating and creating that dialectic in those regions so that they could implant more of their own control systems and so on, justify various things. I mean, there's people who live in Iraq who say, it was like there was never a war here. What you see on the news isn't the same as what is the real world for us.
Same in Syria. It was a bit like, why do you keep saying we're unhappy? We're happy. Leave us alone. There's nothing. And of course, they're saying, this is what people are capturing on their phones. But actually, they were telling us something completely different was happening.
So, I will say this to you, Robin, on the point of the Arab Spring and my point that I think that all governments are a franchise. I would include those governments, and I would include also the puppets that come in as a consequence of that. Because just like the Mandela story, if you lived in South Africa when I did, and you went through the war that I went through, you would have known that South Africa didn't need to change its position. It was creating its own arsenal, weapons. It had its own fantastic farming industry and a bunch of other industries that it sort of built up in its own sort of defiance in the apartheid kind of era, right? And all of that, again, is staged by all the parties involved. But, the South Africa story was one, the military victories and the military events that I was involved in, there was no doubt that there was no military force in Southern Africa like the South African Defense Force. Supported by the Israelis, by the way, and so, but the suddenness with which all of us, they said, oh, now we've gone from fighting to defend our borders and to keep the communists out and all of this sort of thing to we're handing it over to the African National Congress, these communists that you used to have to fight against. We're handing them over in 2 years' time, by the way, and we just decided to do that, and we're hoping that everybody's going to kind of go along with it. No, I think this is what they do is that if they have an opposition ready to go, then they'll let these things happen and they'll sponsor them to happen. Because if it were the case, and I'm sure you guys, if you're in the flat earth, have thought about this already, but if it were the case that Bashar al-Assad was outside of the club, don't you think he has the money, and same with Saddam, and same with Gaddafi? Don't you think they have the money to buy an online magazine, to buy a bloody TV station or whatever, and start pumping truth propaganda out? The earth is flat. You're something much greater than your science has ever taught you. No. They're still teaching the same bullshit science. They're still teaching the same bullshit geography and history and so on. They've all come from Sandhurst. They've all come from the system. And they're still propagating that same crap.
They're all in on it together, aren't they?
Exactly. When does that little chunky dude from North Korea come out and say, "Oh, you know, you live on a flat Earth, right?" Because if I was him, and I was trying to mess with the Americans, I would be and the Russians, I'd be telling you that.
I'd be
Can I
broadcasting.
just say though that there is stuff that happens there. Sorry, Robin. 1 second, Robin. Then you can come in. But I saw this program where basically after 9/11, Malaysia took, Bush and Blair to court. Without they subpoenaed them, but of course they didn't come, and they found them guilty. No, we didn't hear of that here. That they did that.
Yeah. Yes. Although, having said that, I would suggest that within their judicial system and within certain systems, they might have allowed a certain thing to happen. But if that were true, and they were able to, as we are able to work out, and when we switch on that 9/11 didn't happen anything like they said it did, then why isn't that country, Malaysia, doing this? What I just suggested: buy a magazine, buy an online thing, get that in every language of the world. It won't cost you more than 100 million quid or something like that for a country. It won't cost much at all to have a massive information campaign about the truth about 9/11. And you've never heard that. I mean, one might argue, sometimes I chew over, what are the certain characters in Flat Earth, for example, that we hear that they get paid to do what they do. What if they're being paid by a benevolent kind of group to say we want this truth out? What if it's money left over from Gaddafi, and they've gone, we got 10 million here. Why don't we pay a few like high profile people to go and become like flat earthers and tell the world about flat Earth? They just can't tell them where this money's coming from and so on. So I've considered that as an option. But in the main, I'd say that I've never been told the truth by a single body. So what point should I give any of them any credence? Because if you had your own secret service, if you had your own military, if you had your own higher education, then the truth about some of these things that we took for granted, that we just accepted, the truth about these things are known. And they sorry.
I was going to say, did you see the young guy from Ethiopia on Harry's live stream today? He was talking to Jason, and so sorry, it was the UK tour on Jason's live stream, and he said, yeah, in Ethiopia we're taught about flat Earth. We actually think you guys are mad because you pay your license to get fake news. and the conversation is amazing because he actually says, yeah, we see right through this stuff. We look at you guys as really brainwashed, and yet we're taught about the firmament and 7 layers of heavens. They're actually taught that in school, or his particular school anyway. So yeah, I wonder about the threat to existence if you really did take it to the powers that be and broadcast it on your TV. I wonder if you'd last long if you tried it. But I certainly think if you had an existential threat put on your doorstep by let's say another country, you have that in your armory for sure. I know Putin's threatened it a couple of times, but I don't believe he's completely independent either. But he's threatened to talk about the moon landings, hasn't he?
Yeah, but look, well, I mean,
he's not going to.
In my early days of kind of starting to look at the world in a different way, I used to, hope that Putin was that kind of guy who was going to talk out of turn and so on. But no,
he just threatens to.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, right? I'm not someone who believes in nuclear fission. I don't think that there are nuclear bombs. And so for me, the Bay of Pigs was staged by both parties. Well, when I say both, I mean the Russians and the Americans and the Cubans, but and the Cubans were involved in my little spat down in Angola. So, I think now that Fidel Castro was, a stooge of the Americans anyway, and he's that perfect, like the North Korean dude. He's that perfect kind of antithesis, the Mr. Evil, the bad guy that you get from Hollywood, and so he provides that foil, that fear factor to keep the voters paying. So I think that Putin is just, and of course he's the red-blue game, and that's all he is. He's definitely You know, when he was pushed out of the G8, that was just, I think that really happened. It wasn't a dream, but I think that I mean, and it's such Punch and Judy kind of. You know, when I grew up, I thought politics was quite a stable thing to do. Now it's all Punch and Judy bullshit, and him being pushed out, or the country, and then you see it in the press every now and again. I'll see a headline: May, Theresa May decides, or cabinet waits for May's kind of thing. It's like, oh my God. So this is actually how it comes down to it. It's like we have now got ourselves to a position where we are our whole sort of reason and our future and so on is dependent on a single person's decision, whether she may or may not do this or that, and so on. And I'm seeing this for the game that it is, and what the good thing about the Brexit is for the game controllers is that they've been able to kind of string people along with this thing that, if you think about the Bay of Pigs or the Cold War or the Brexit situation or any sort of catastrophe, you need somebody to run that, right? You need somebody to kind of own that. So what they're continually doing, as our friend H.L. Mencken will tell you, is that government is constantly seeking, a never-ending series of hobgoblins with which to frighten the populace. And if it has this, it has the reason to stay in power. And so what they would never want to have happen, think about it, what they would never want to have happen is for people to become truly happy. There's that movie about a guy who had a security company and business was bad, so he started doing some break-ins himself, and business was good.
Yeah, it's like the rise of people who spread a message of love seem to be the ones that get taken out. And back on your point of Russia and its Punch and Judy, they signed the Antarctic Treaty, didn't they? So if we're really enemies, why are we still going along with that game?
And we go to the same arms fairs, and it's just such a I mean, but it has to be like, it has to be kept at that game level. It has to be kept at that, a Russian spy has been killed, or a Russian or an American this has been found out, or whatever. So, even I think those sorts of stories, the Litvinenko story, for example, I no longer, with respect, I hope he didn't die and so on, but I no longer think that, those things can be taken at face value as real things,
Oh gosh, yeah.
And they're just, because when I was in the reading of the newspapers and the following of the propaganda channels, I was eager for information on this. And then of course at the pub or at the water cooler or whatever, you're able to express your good knowledge about this particular subject, and and then we can argue, and you and I can debate about, well, whether it was this or it was that, or whether I'm going to take the Russians' view that this, you know what I mean? And so we're constantly sort of playing or conflating their characters, their Donald Trump or their Putin or their status as Russia and this potential threat. I mean, when you meet a Russian person, because I was bombed by Russian planes, I've attacked Russian tanks, that was my experience as a 19-year-old kid. So Russia was an important thing in my life, but you meet Russian people and they have nothing to do with that, and you meet American people, they have nothing to do with what's going on. And I want to say this now that it comes to my mind, you meet white people and it has nothing to do with white people. And I'm saying this for the reason that I'm encountering this one of those other little new, for me anyway, sort of points of difference that people are that we've come through this, like, whites are superior to blacks kind of racism that I was brought up into, and now I see that there's black folks going around saying they're superior to whites, and just
what they've done is they've made everybody hate everybody.
Yeah, they've got a story for every dude to fall into. Everyone's got their own little kind of bandwagon to jump on and be angry at the other guy. And I said to some guy yesterday in Speaker's Corner, I'm like, this guy was a bit fucking out of order, really. Anyway, I had my boy with me. Anyway, he was like very like anti, I'm a devil.
Something before I forget. Adam from Iron Rail Media is in the chat room, and he says, hi.
Hey, Adam. I'm still using that toothpaste you gave me in Birmingham, my friend. So thank you very much for that. Props to you on that, man. That's the anti-fluoride, no fluoride toothpaste, by the way. So I highly
You
recommend.
want to talk a little bit about your, because you and Robin are both activists, aren't you? Go on.
and say, is dude there?
Flat
Flat
Earth
Earth dude, are you there?
He may have gone.
He's at his shop. I know that. He told us earlier. It's just for like shout outs. My eyes, I can't really see. I've not got my glasses here with me.
Yeah, shout out to everybody in the chat room.
But I'm just
But anyway, you want to do a bit more about like you go out into the public and are activists. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because obviously, John Smith and Roxanne have been in the chat room.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Hi, Roxanne and Harry. I have to say that you know, seeing the John Smith Global Eye a few years ago was kind of inspiring to me, you know, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then Authentic Intent caught up with him, you know, Josh over in America, brave dude, you know, sitting out there all on his own, and I was like, wow, this is more interesting to me than sitting and listening to people talk about how they found a flat Earth. So I hope I haven't bored people too much about my own backstory tonight. But you know, it felt like we weren't going anywhere. We were sitting in these little chat groups and not really, you know, and listening to each other and not really, you know, and so to have these folks stand up and start going out and do what they did. And Dale, actually, from Beyond the Imaginary Curve, I saw some of his you know, he doesn't do that much of the activism side, but you know, he was one of the early guys to go out there and do a few interviews with people, and I was like, yeah, I think this is really what we need to have the courage to do, is to get out there. It took me a while to kind of pluck up that courage, but you know, credit to Harry and Josh and for getting out there and starting the ball rolling. When Roxanne announced that there was an event starting up in the summer to you know, hit Speaker's Corner, and there was going to be a few of us and so on, it was like a no-brainer for me to you know, my time had come to, you know, I'd been biding my own time because I didn't really know what to do with it in the first year, and second year I was having a baby, and then at the beginning of 2018, I guess end of 2017, I was like, where are we going? And I didn't think we were going anywhere, but with the rise of the activism, I'm thinking, you know, now we're starting to kind of, you know, get beyond the realm of YouTube, because the number of people you speak to that say, do you go on YouTube? What? No, I don't go on YouTube. I used to have the same attitude about YouTube. Is, you know, I think something is seeded in our minds about it being just for, you know, music and cats. But to me, the activism has been both challenging and rewarding, because it's challenging that, you know, people are so deeply lost in the program, and it's rewarding because actually you do reach people. People do either straight away or sometimes come back, and you know, you've made a difference. So I have to say this has been a wonderful kind of addition to what I'm doing, and I knew when I was doing it, I was hoping to encourage others to kind of join the band. So I'll yield the floor.
Yeah, so the tour's been absolutely amazing. It's been an absolute honor to watch it build up momentum. It's been like a snowball. And what's lovely is to see it's become the people's tour. And I think Roxanne and Harry and Jason always wanted it to be that. And the more they go out and publicize the dates and show the live updates that evening, the more it's attracting people to the tour. Because I'm in the chat watching people go, when are you in Leicester? When are you in Nottingham? Etc. etc. And we're seeing more and more people come out. So it's getting on for 5-10 people every tour stop. There's flat earthers coming to say hello, bringing care packages, putting money in Harry's hand. It's wonderful to see. And you know, I've been part of the whole kind of strategy group with Dave, and we've been talking about the finances, the strategy, the finale on November the 3rd. Should we have another London stop as well? So Roxanne's put another Speaker's Corner tour stop. And if you go to globelive.co.uk, I'll just pop those into the chat thread now. But what's been a real thrill is some of the little clips you see of people. Some of them actually wake up whilst they're with Harry. There's a lovely deaf couple or hard of hearing couple yesterday who were watching and listening and reading the leaflets, and just live on Harry's stream, you could see them wake up. And they smiled and they had a sense of humor. And I remember them sort of showing how they would try and focus on the distance to see the curvature, and they couldn't. They were smiling at each other. It was just so heartwarming. It was beautiful, really lovely to watch. And we've had some amazing reactions. And one of the things that we've been talking about is the grand finale, which I'll leave that to Roxanne to announce fully. But what we want to do is talk to the press. And one of the things the team discussed was, let's show all the range of reactions that that people demonstrate and display when they're being confronted with this. And I've put together a little montage of clips and on my channel, and you can look at them on my last video. But one of them's a guy in a white van who just says, "You're a fool, you're an idiot," and drives off, leaving Harry to like, what have I said? And equally, you get people who just have different reactions. And what we want to show is like a 1 out of 10 might be someone who's just straight in, thank you very much, beautiful. And a 10 out of 10 might be completely triggered. The man in the van was pretty triggered. And some people get angry. I noticed a young girl today who's a student of astrophysics, and she left Harry masking an absolute seething smile. She was so seething because Harry had gently unpicked every part of her reason for going to uni. And she said to him, if I take on board this, my degree's not going to go so well, is it? And as she leaves Harry, she's absolutely seething. And I find that fascinating, because here's someone who's investing 3 to 4 years of their life, and Harry's just gently unpicked all of those things which are not based on any facts whatsoever. So yeah, so the tour has been amazing. I can't wait for Harry to get to Bristol and Bath, because I've taken a couple of afternoons off work. I'm going to go and join them and join the tour. So I think, to say to anyone about activism, go and join the tour if you can. Just give out leaflets, and we'll all be doing it again. I'll be doing Bristol and local areas again. Just go and join those that can coordinate and hand leaflets out and just watch. Because I think we watched the YouTube user Tilly Mint, who's called Geraldine in real life. She just jumped into action straight away. Now I can see that she was so keen to get involved.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see that happen.
Yeah. And that chap Geordie Geordie, was it?
Georgie boy. Georgie Porgy or Georgie boy.
And the thing is that I think a lot of people who looked into the flat Earth at any depth are probably able to talk about it if they're given that platform and that opportunity. And I think that the tour, or the events we had at Speaker's Corner, where there was a group of us, I think it was really positive. And I think well, I just should add before I forget, I'm joining Harry and Jason on Wednesday in Cambridge.
Cool.
I'm hoping to do a few days on tour starting on Wednesday. But for me, I finally got what those Christian preachers were always going on about, like, how motivated they were to get out there and spread the good word, the gospel, and so on. And for me, when I found this now, I realized that this was so important that it was my duty to be a disciple or a speaker or a truth teller or whatever, of this information, because it's almost like finding God, in a way that it's like you have to if you go along this route, if you look at this information, it will liberate your mind, heart, body, and soul. The Trinity will be freed up. And, you know, and for me, that seems like the most valuable, other than being a good dad and a good, you know, man and so on. It seems like the most valuable thing that I could do with my life.
Absolutely.
And, you know, even if you're not paid to do it, it is such a rewarding thing to offer people a ticket to the truth, a ticket to their own spirit, ultimately their own spiritual liberation. You know, when you get past the angry with the government, angry with the control system, and so on, and wanting to change it all, even if you never change it all, but you're able to change yourself. I say this a lot to people now: to know thyself is I think the most valuable thing that the one tangible thing that we can do. And if you take this journey, it doesn't mean that you find flat earth, you will know yourself. No, I know that for sure. There's still much to be done, but it's like as I say to people now, if you play your football on a ball, you're never going to be very good. But if you play your football on a pitch, well, you could be amazing.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So Karen, to sort of finish up, I think you if you can join some activism, and if you're just passive initially, I think Jason was initially, you then join in and get more active, and you can see by watching the live updates how everyone is getting involved. Lots of people just rock up, not knowing quite how they're going to do it, and then they end up giving out leaflets, and before they know it, they're joining in conversations.
Even
So
my wife is you know, she came to the first, or not the first, maybe the second or third event at Speaker's Corner, and with it before she knew it, she found herself in a conversation with someone. You know, it doesn't
That's
need
awesome.
to be, it doesn't need to be that kind of, because there are some pretty intense conversations, and I think smart people are smarter than me, just walk away from them.
Yeah,
Well, I'm hooking up with Marilyn and hopefully Cosmic Cat on Saturday from the chat room.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
I've also met quite a few flat earthers along the way, UK ones, obviously. And hopefully, cross fingers, get to meet Mr. Thrive and Survive next year.
Yeah, awesome.
Really, I like Mr. Thrive and Survive. I have to say, I'll be quite frank and say that, you know, him chasing QAnon so far down the rabbit hole was like, because he was one of the guys, you know, Thrive and Survive was one of the guys that I sort of first, you know, he was a real guy, you know, real guy. I could really connect with him and learned so much from him. And then when he got suckered into the QAnon thing, I'm like, hey man, come on, you surely smarter than that. You know, but yeah, no, he's a lovely guy. I'd love to put my arms around him and say thanks for all the information.
He's a very nice guy.
One of the things that I will say, you know, as I have a moment here, is that we should be teacher and student, you know, and I think that I've learned so much from so many fantastic people, but I've sometimes then realized that I've almost eclipsed what they taught me. You know, I've gone past what they taught me. So let me give you, to pick on, you know, a perennial favorite, let me say Mark Sargent, for example. You know, he might be the first person you hear about flat earth, and my gosh, what a, you know, you'll never forget his name if he's the guy who teaches you the first things you know about the flat earth theory. However, you know, if he's your only teacher, then you're going to stay in a box. The same as you know, Halbig, the guy who does the Sandy Hook stuff, or you know, the 9/11 Truth Movement. I forget the, you know, the name of the guy who runs that. You know, you could spend your whole time listening to him and go, well, you know, this is the only teachings I need. And I don't know. There's a lot more teachings to be had. And if I, as a teacher, fail to remember that, first of all, I'm a student, then I might start to sound like I know it all, or, you know, I'm not willing to hear new information. I'm not willing to reset myself, because this is a trap that we've all found ourselves falling into, I think, often. So I would say that, you know, we need to remain students. We need to be mindful and diligent not to fall into traps of saying, oh, well, now what I've taught, what I've learned is the, you know, it's the end of the line. There's nothing more to know. I think that would be probably be a mistake.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, remain the student. You know, be the student. And
I
one of
think
the
what
things
you
I
have
like
to
about your
remember is you somehow still have to remember that you're humble. If
Yeah.
you lose that, then you think that you're everything, and everything is still bigger than you, even though you are really important. And this bit about what you're saying, even though it's easy to say these words, and every day you stumble and you have to sort of reset yourself almost, but to be a spiritual master is to know yourself, see yourself, accept yourself, and be yourself.
I like that.
Yeah, can I just say something? It was nicely put that what you just said there, Trinity. You say a lot to absorb, but I will watch this again tomorrow. I was going to say something, and it's based upon again duality. You can be a globalist on one extreme. You've got a point, opinion, you know, and on the other side you have a flat earther, or you know, a global denier, whatever you want to say. But the good thing is that we need to have these discussions and arguments, and you know, I'm not saying that we're arguing, no, I mean, but other people that are, you know, denying that the earth is flat, we need to have these discussions and arguments in that sense, because then we figure it out, you know. It's like a level ruler in a sense. There is a balance, there is some sort of a conformity where someone will realize and say,
it's very narcissistic, isn't it?
like, they'll realize that there isn't a curve, you know. It's that will eventually seal the deal, I'm sure, because we know there's no curve to be found. But anyway, carry on, Dave. Carry
Well,
on.
no, I mean, on that point, Astral, you know, I think that I think that there's been some interesting travel in the activism space and recently, and I mean, firstly, it's worth saying that Harry is, you know, getting smoother and slicker as the tour goes on. I think that Jason having that unfortunate break, or in that break because of the unfortunate situation with his mum passing away, has come back smoother and slicker and you know, more spicy. And then, you know, over in America, we've had some very interesting stuff happening. You know, so, you know, we had the Josh Authentic Intent situation, but you know, lately you've had Zoom Truth and Nathan Roberts, Nathan Thompson. You know, these guys are bringing in like a different energy, a different approach, and so on, and to the activism. And I think it's just you know, helping to kind of raise the tone, raise the conversation, and
Yeah, and it's growing, isn't it? That's the main thing, that we're growing, is being mentioned, talked about, and even like I flat smack people all the time. I do. I don't record it, obviously, in case something obscene happens. But there is change. There is a change. I can feel. Sorry, Karen. Can I just finish? There is a change in attitudes, and there's a change in tides from, like, you know, a year or two ago, where I was classified the town lunatic. Well, I still am in by a lot of people, but I can feel, and people are, you know, more receptive to it, and oh yeah, that's true, that's true. Taxi drivers talk about planes when you're in a taxi. Talk about planes because they know they're going to the airport with customers, you know. And then you mention it. Sorry.
Robin's got to go, and we can talk about this afterwards.
That's all right. I don't need to say. I just realised my family's wound down now, and probably can't talk for too much longer without getting a tea cup.
That's okay. Do you want to just say the things that you were doing, and then obviously Dave and Astral can talk a little bit in a moment when you've gone.
No, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Globe Light tour finishes on the 3rd of November. And if any flat earthers in the UK would like to join us, we are publishing the venue for that it's in Southall in London, and we will be it'll be between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. where we'll have the press and some big names in that press conference. So you don't have to be on camera or in shot, but if you want to come and give us some moral support, you're more than welcome to attend. We'll have at least 100 seats, or at least 60 seats. So it's between 60 and 100 seats. If you'd like to come, then just stay tuned to Roxanne's channel, and you'll get all the information on there. And what else is coming up? Yeah, all the dates are on globeli.co.uk, and that's the remaining dates. And just one more thing from my perspective is the documentary that was filmed on me about a couple of months ago is due out, and I've seen it, and it's pretty good. It's my encounter with an astrocosmologist, and Nicholas has done us proud. He's told a very honest story. It's not in any way contentious, so I'm very happy with him. When I've got his permission, I will publish it on my channel. But I just want to say, Dave, everybody on the panel, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for having me on, Karen.
Pleasure.
And we'll keep you up to date. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can just offer you a little compliment before you go, I think you're very good at the stuff that you do with the editing and all of that stuff. I've been impressed with your channel and your work ever since you emerged in my world. So I just wanted to say that before you go.
Oh, thanks, mate. And ditto, I can't wait to have you speak to the press and give them a proper truth, red pill truth bomb. Lay it on thick.
Well, Robin, is that we noticed you as well. That's what that's about. You've been noticed as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you for coming on again, Robin. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, I love watching your videos. I do love watching your videos. Man, you're on the button, man. And I thought I was on the button, but bloody hell, you're even before I am. It's a compliment.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm glued to everything Harry and Roxanne and Jason is doing at the moment, because it is so much a litmus test to what's happening in the UK right now. It's awesome.
Cheers, brother.
All right, well, take care. Thanks. Nice speaking to you all.
Darling. See you soon.
Cheers. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, darling. Hey, down to 4. Yes, I have been to a few meetups myself. I've met Martin Leakey, Ethan Oakley. I nearly met Patricia Steer. I've been with others. I've met Dave Marsh. Dave Marsh is a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Met a few others. I've met Nora, who comes in the chat room, Marilyn and Cosmic Cat, and I've met Roxanne and John Smith and others.
It's an interesting thing, because we know that as humans we are, vastly different and different people, and we like different things, and we're drawn and attracted to different people and so on. So, I guess it's a little bit like, being in a bowls club or something. There's going to be a shared interest in your bowls, but a variety of different characters and flavors and so on. But I don't need to get on with everybody. I don't think that's necessarily what I'm after. But we do have this wonderful opportunity. I think someone said it earlier on, maybe it was Robin, but that we are the first generation. Was it Tilly? We are the first generation who really have the power at our fingertips to change the paradigm, possibly. Despite my pessimism earlier, we have that possibility. And on my optimistic side of the card, I say that what the system is building with all its draconian controls and network and so on is actually just building a framework or a network with which we can propagate truth in a much more
Can I ask you something though? When you started looking, did you think that everything would be a lie?
No.
It's a bit
No.
of a shock, isn't it? Really, it's still like I still think everything. Like I have to remember that everything's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to accept that even when I breathe, the air the ether that I take into my lungs isn't doing the thing that my biology teacher told me it was doing. I think that there is a
There's something else. I was watching this guy today. He's called Phenomenal Travel Videos. He looks at all the structures around him, and he's even noticing that in a temple there's a bicycle carved 2,000 years ago. Well, that's the time they're saying it's old, isn't it? But these things are old, aren't they? Because they were here before, and it's got a bicycle in it. It's the Phenomenal Travel Videos. And then there's this rock, and on the top there's this pool which collects water, that never runs out of water. There's all these structures that have been there, no steps. So how do they get it all up there? How do they build it all?
Yeah.
Great big rock. So he's looking into things. I just find him quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it does make you wonder. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear what the chat room and others think about this, and that is that if humanity was once greater and is now lesser, are we at our least point, or are about to kind of, either get kind of wiped out so that a new higher sort of thing occurs, or are we just going to still get a little bit dumber, a little bit kind of lower, the whole of human trajectory? Because it might be that a few million people know about the flat earth and so on, but many more people know what Beyonce had for breakfast last night, or this morning or something. So is it possible that they still have more plans to dumb humanity down? My older children watched a movie called Wall-E when they were growing up, and Wall-E tells a story about how humanity has come to think that its Earth is completely uninhabitable and has spent 700 years out in space, and their bodies have just become these round things where they can't support. Their legs have become short and weak, and they can't support themselves and walk around anymore. And if you ask a lot of people out there, they think that our Earth is ruined already. They don't need to actually ruin it. The PR. But now someone said to me the other day, it's the oceans now. The oceans are so full of plastics. Nothing's. Well, that's just the current kind of propaganda. That's.
You find it a bit strange that. Because Ditcher sent it to me. It's a bit like I can't remember. Somebody Leeds. It wasn't the Leeds that comes in the chat room. I know. Marty Leeds. That's it. It's basically once you tell someone about flat Earth and then they walk off, it isn't cognitive dissonance. It's actually they're cowards.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean, do you mean the?
Once someone's been told and they want to fight it all, it isn't a mental thing where they can't cope with it. It's actually that they've chosen to be cowards and they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to know it.
I would allow someone 6 or 12 months, maybe 18 months or something like that. And maybe it's not fair to even say that short, but I think we all took a little while to, and
I didn't say yes the first time I saw it. I just thought, oh, not something else. No, I can't get into all that. I've just done 9/11.
Yeah, and I think your time frame was similar to mine, and so there wasn't a lot of content in early 2015 to kind of fall back on. There wasn't a lot of regular people. There were, with the clues, and I think I came across the Vsauce video first, which is obviously disinfo.
Yeah, I know. That's true.
So I was like, there's something here, but it's no, that's not right. That's not right. They talk about running up a hill and all that shit, and so it took me a little while. So I forgive people, or I accept that people are. It's not a case of you hear it once and I can switch, I can turn that switch. But I would say to someone, if you've heard about this, for 6 months and not done anything, then shame for your laziness. But if you've had a year and a year and a half to stew on this, and you still aren't willing to accept it, yes, there is something holding you back, and I'm starting to lose.
Would you know it's really weird? Don't you think it's really weird that anybody, any politician, could even look through YouTube and start seeing stuff that people are putting out and realizing that there is something really wrong, especially with NASA?
No, well, look, I mean, I think that the
And yet they're not doing anything.
the governments will be getting stats from, algorithms from, their intel people saying, this thing is growing or that thing is growing. There's no way that it's the same as, for example, I know we're getting some great press for the end of this Harry's tour, but for example, the Dave Murphy thing that he did like 4 years ago in Moldova or wherever it was in Macedonia, TV, a BBC guy could have seen that, or any of the content. I mean, Martin Kenny's stuff, or the stuff after the three guys that went on the breakfast TV show after the Birmingham event. That thing had millions of views on YouTube, or has had millions of views on YouTube. It's been on terrestrial TV, so there's no way that the editors of the newspapers, the big editors and the big editors of the TV programs and the news programs don't know about this. They're just not given the green light perhaps to cover it, so and those that are, this is what I think, that those that are sort of are part of a controlled leak out of the bag, rather than why, because if this was true, sorry, I know it's true, but if the editors of, say, the big news channels were to hear about this and they had carte blanche as to what they were going to cover, then they would immediately, if it's you and I, you have to think, well, shit, let's look into this, and let's do something big. Well, here we are, years down the line, and we haven't seen that. However, we are seeing, Coronation Street did a couple of things, and it's appeared someone else was saying,
they mentioned it on Big Brother, and
yeah. So, and this is what I would consider to be that sort of just letting a little bit out, so more and more the conversation just starts getting bigger and bigger, and so I think that whatever coverage this year's tour will get will be at the behest of whoever's calling those shots. I just don't see the BBC 6 o'clock news picking this up in any way other than this is a final story. And there's
don't you remember in that hurricane they had this guy basically up to his waist in water to say how deep it was, and actually somebody walked behind him, he was kneeling. And then there was this other couple, the same thing. He's going, it's so windy here, I can't like this. And then these people just walk past. It was windy, but not like they said it was. So they'd only want to lie to us. It's all a lie.
Well, it creates fear, doesn't it? Because you sell a lot more raincoats, or whatever it is.
Somebody sent me a link the other day. It was about 1970s, and the tag was, "This is when reporters really used to report and were what do you call it? Went down the middle. Nowadays they don't, do they?
Balanced reporting, no, and also you don't get the same sort of investigative journalism anymore, because most stories just come through the clearinghouses. There's, I think, 2 main clearinghouses.
Well, I saw this other little video where somebody saying that even all the channels in America, they all say the same thing.
Yeah,
they've all got the same headings. So one after the other, each different channel was saying the same words, not even their own words, the same words.
Mm.
So
yeah, I know.
Aren't they?
It's all mind control.
People believe that BBC 24 is real and that it's there for the people.
Yeah, the BBC World Service.
Yeah, and it isn't.
No, of course not. No, well, we know this now, and we know that all of it is for control. But there is so many reasons, and I guess there's so many reasons why people won't look deeply at flat Earth, and they would much rather have me be some kind of drooling moron than reconsider the things that they've been taught, because it does really upset the apple cart. And perhaps it's easier for me because I never chose to kind of, I never chose a career. I never wanted to be in a career. I never wanted to, there was nothing I wanted to do until I found this. So it's perhaps easier for someone like me who hasn't made a huge success of career and life and so on to go, ooh, it's all rubbish, and the stuff that high, hold myself in such high esteem over is actually either propaganda or I had some guys on my channel today giving me some grief about the mud flood stuff that I look at London mud flood stuff. I'm not a deep researcher on mud flood. There's some guys who do fantastic work, and Martin Leakey's name came up, and there's Pal Lee, Flat Earth British sub, and Wise Up channel, and some of the others. There's a channel called Mud Flood now. They go into this stuff a little bit more deeply. But I had these archaeologists, or at least one of them was an archaeologist, having a pop at me and trying to say, well, obviously we know that we built like this. We dug them down into the ground like that, and we put the first floor into the basement, or people just threw their rubbish into the street or their shit into the street until eventually they abandoned the ground floor or whatever. And people don't want to let go of that. They're so proud of that. So
I've just explained, haven't I, on this structure, this guy has seen a bicycle in one of these temples.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to go and find it. It wasn't just there, but he said he realised the monks always left messages everywhere. And he's looking, and there's a bicycle.
Yeah.
So it's like they all had everything, and then we lost it. And then I think we're the generation that dug ourselves out, and we've got here from there.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, when it comes to the mud flood, or when we dug ourselves out, it begs the question: how did we forget if this happened in the last 100 or 200 years? Because some of these buildings don't seem that old.
But you know something, Dave? Someone came on the other day, and they sort of went like, well, now flat Earth, it's here. And I had to say, well, it's always been here. And it was actually even on the internet until the late 90s. And then they took everything away, so that a couple of generations has happened. And then they think, oh, well, what's this flat Earth? It's because they were able to mask it for a couple of generations. So people then forget. They don't know. A couple of generations don't know about it. So it's only the 1960s they actually turned us into this horrible global ball.
Yes, and actually, before 100 years ago, almost no one had any education to you know what I mean. So it was easy.
Well, isn't it? If you listen to Martin Leakey, they had electricity in the 1700s, and I've seen these etchings with these really old buildings in it, and there's these great big things in it. Like they were much bigger than what we had.
Oh yeah.
The drawings. It's like, wow, why wouldn't I have ever seen that before?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to ask yourself a couple of searching questions when you start to look at these buildings, and you start to ask how it is that they were, these are meant to be people that were simpler than us. They were simpler than us, with less technology and less manpower, less machinery, and so on, and yet they build these fantastic buildings. They have these high ceilinged, in London, all these very high ceiling places with these massive windows and so on, and they don't fit with what comes in the sort of turn of the 20th century, where people are building these tiny little, stone and brick kind of things that are barely, with tiny windows. Yeah, and no heating, no central. It was like we went from a high age to a dark age, but just 100 odd years ago. And because no one was receiving any education, the first children that ever went to school became like, the first professors, because, they were taught new stuff and they just accepted it. And perhaps if they went home and said, hey, Grandpappy, hey, how's my American accent? Hey, Grandpappy, I just been down to the schoolhouse and they taught me that the earth was round. What? They taught you the earth was round? That's poppycock. But Grandpappy dies, and grandchild becomes the teacher, and so yeah, Granddad was a little bit of an old school guy. He thought the earth was flat, right? So it doesn't take more than a couple of generations to move through that, and everybody's forgotten that once we thought that. So you can see how in the last 100, 150 years we could have been totally manipulated from something that we don't know. So the whole Middle Ages, Dark Ages, all that kind of crap, 1,000 years of history perhaps has been sort of inserted. And
I've even looked at the First and Second, like it's what you're told is the First and Second World War. That destroyed most of Europe's infrastructure all in one hit when we were going electric cars and, free energy and all that. And so that's totally changed everything for me.
Sure.
It's like, whoa. It's like,
Sure.
also through these wars, before that, everybody had a role, and then the roles broke down, and then we got to, well, men don't know what to do, and women don't know what to do anymore, and we only need you for your sperm to have the baby now. I don't even need to be with you. This all happened only years ago. This sort of breaking everything up and.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's something about breaking us. It's something to do with breaking us away from who and what we truly are. And now we sort of stray into the areas of the divinity, and that actually, it appears to me that we have some kind of divine place here, and we are the essence of the Creator, and as such, we have such divine power, such divine abilities, but for generations, yes, that has been traduced. It has been poisoned out of us mentally, and through the food now, and air and water and so on. And then through other memes of, the way that things are presented to children on the TV, from Bob the Builder to, I don't watch any of the TV now, but there's just these ideas of stereotypes and the roles that we are, but you'll never get, the only time you ever get divinity is from your church leaders who, in some cases are pedophiles. So how are you meant to be, taking your lead about your true divinity from this kind of corrupt organization that has gone around crusading and doing all these sorts of things? So we also, when it comes to,
doesn't it, with the death certificate?
yeah, but then when it comes to the divine feminine and the divine masculine, I think that we're sent out to war, men, and play rugby and all this sort of stuff, which is very plays into the left brain divine masculine kind of thing, but it skews out the softer aspect of the male. And this is something that I can speak of because this was my upbringing. I was made to be.
You can see which way they wanted that to go, because they don't care how many people sign up, and you're all expendable, and they don't care if you die. So they already know where the line is. They don't care about us.
Yeah, that, but they don't. You see what they've been doing.
Experiment like they tell us the animals are. We are the animals as well.
Yeah, they like us to think like that. I think that the divine spark of the female is perhaps more important. I don't want to get into a male female kind of war and struggle, because we're equal, but in terms of the right kind of balance, then a balanced divine feminine is going to raise divine masculine with a divine balance between the masculine and feminine within that character. And he then will be the protector for the divine feminine. I think this is not Theresa May, by the way. This is not Margaret Thatcher and Oprah Winfrey, or whatever her name is. These are the divine feminine skewed towards the masculine, and they are simply going to perpetuate the boardroom mentality. So, for me, if I can talk about my own experience in the divine thing, is that, I was like most blokes, made to be fairly, you have to be tough on the outside and so on, and you don't want to be too beta male. And now I'm trying to learn for myself how to be that right balance of the man, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, so it's that softer side, that side of me that's allowed to cry. I've allowed myself this week, actually. I cried a little bit when I came home and I saw my marijuana, my cannabis plant pots and all the root beds strewn all over my garden. That was like a very emotional moment for me. And I'm willing to talk about it here because, you know, for me, that's like, you know, the ability to express myself in that way and allow that softer kind of emotion to come through is an important part of me achieving the balance in a healthy way for my gender, and such that I can be a nurture my wife, support her in the right way so that she can be as powerful a woman as she can possibly be, and if she's right, then she nurtures my boy and my other boy and my daughter, right? You know, that's how it works. Some people say, and I kind of like this, that the women were meant to, the divine feminine was meant to write the law, and the divine masculine was meant to keep the law and enforce that. You know, and I don't have a problem with that, but I recognize that most women and most of us men are imbalanced, and that's not personal. It's not an attack on anyone. It is just the nature of the system. You know, you are a young boy watching Teenage Ninja Turtles from the age of 3 or 4. I encountered a little boy today, 2.5, and he was pushing on my boy Alexander. I said to the parents, "Are you letting this child watch TV?" Because that's where they surely, that's the only place they can be seeing violence like this, where they're pushing on each other. That's the only.
Can I just interrupt you there, Dave?
Please do, Astral.
Talking about what we grew up on, I remember quite vividly Magic Roundabout. I was, probably about 3 years old, I would think. I'm giving away my age now, but anyway, Magic Roundabout, that just like it played on me, and I can still remember it today. You can actually still see it online. They've redone it. They've made newer versions as well, but you can see the old versions online. They will blow you away if you look at them and you, read between the lines. That's what I'm saying.
Was that the one where they had the Captain Pugwash and Seaman Staines or something?
Yeah, and it's probably the same people that have done the that kind of series. I'm not sure if it's the same people, but along those lines anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we now know that our TV is...
Do you not know Magic Roundabout?
I didn't get TV until I was about 11 years old.
And actually, actually, now thinking about it, the tune to it was quite spooky. It was a roundabout turning around. If anyone in the chat remembers it, yeah. This it was kind of spooky, like an organ kind of music. Flat Earth Dude, you'll be about to play.
I like the Clingers. What is it called? The Clingers.
The Clangers.
The Clangers. That's it. Oh my goodness, Clangers.
Yeah.
but you gotta wonder.
I didn't know you were 104 years old as well, Karen. Yeah.
You know, one thing though, I remember looking these up with artists one day, and even in the 60s though, the children at least were taught what, like, it was herb and sage. You had Hammy Hamster. They were outside. We went outside a lot, even looking through the window outside, gardening. Doesn't happen today, does it? No children's programs really go outside. It's all virtual reality and
thinking back now to what you just said, they're looking through this window or that window, and it was like magic. No, it was a Playhouse, I do believe. Playhouse. Was it called Playhouse? And they had this big paper Playhouse on the wall. And then they looked through the round window today. And what was through the round window?
The square window, the round window.
And then, but the thing is this, whatever it was through that window, they could show you and indoctrinate you with for the next 10 minutes. And let's look at through the square window. They looked through the square window and they'd show you something else that they wanted to indoctrinate you with,
Yes.
like the globe.
Yes.
It's all that. I remember watching Flash Gordon thinking, what? That's ridiculous, I was a child back then, but yeah. It was supposed to look... It was supposed to be true, I think I might have even asked my mum, "Is that right? Is that true or what?" And she said, "No, it's just because you could see the strings, couldn't you?" And all that shit. But I knew back then that wasn't real. I knew, it's like the I don't know. I must have been quite aware back then. Go on, Dave.
No, I was just going to say about like someone like Jimmy Savile, you know, who gets to run a children's show for all those years, and
Oh,
therefore is beamed into millions of children's homes. And what kind of magic is going on? Dark magic is going on when you've got a disgusting, despicable cretin like that, you know, that your children are looking to as a role model. You know, and then it later turns out that your role model turns out to be a deeply sick man or deeply bad man. So, you know, so what are they doing? And we know now that they knew that Jimmy Savile was that rancid creature, and they allow this on TV. And you know, I've got no issue with. Now I'm talking on homosexuality. I've got no issue with homosexuality of people being, you know, gay, but there's so much. You know, so many gay folks on TV. Then when you start to hear about, I don't know, these are absolutely true, but you know, characters like Jennifer Aniston and is a man perhaps, or in transgender, or that Sandra Bullock, you know, is transgender. That you start to hear these stories, and you this is part of that same mind fuckery that's going on, which is that getting you to ideate or masturbate over Jennifer Aniston, who actually is a bloke. You know what? Even if you never find that out, or if you're never willing to accept it, but it's true, then I think there's some dark magic going on there, and it has the potential to get men to fancy slim boys, which is what someone like Jennifer Aniston would be if it were true that she was transgender. So there is a lot of you know, it's deep stuff that is going on. And Donald Trump as president, I mean, he is my contention that he was given that TV show, The Apprentice, simply to give him the you know, the ratings and the awareness, so that the poor fluoride affected American voters would know where to make the mark when it came to election day. Not only that, he would underscore how important it was to be a complete dog in the boardroom, and a bit of a womanizer, a bit of a slag kind of, or a bit, you know, you can, you know, I didn't watch much of the pre-election crap, but you know, the bits that's leaked through, you know, you realize that they're painting two very dark characters here, you know, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and people are being forced to make these, you know, choices, and I think it skews with the mind. Yeah, I was with my father and uncle earlier this week, and you know, my 83-year-old uncle's going, yeah, Donald Trump, he's a good businessman, you know. What the fuck? You know, he's the problem, you know, but because we've been given a character, a hero like this, it's the same as the football thing. Let me just, while I'm on the soapbox, you know, it's the same as the football thing. You know, these little kids are walking around with some other geezer's name on their back. You know, Donald or David Beckham, or you know, whatever. I don't, you know. But the you know, and this is what we're sort of idolizing or hero worshipping. You know, people who are all about becoming all about the bling, all about the money. You know, we're externalizing ourselves. So the star is not us; it's somebody else. And that's really where it all starts to mess with the mind. And the younger they can mess with your mind, the less of a star you will realize you are.
yeah, but that's the bit where the money has won again, isn't it? With the false gods, and everybody thinks they've got to look like David Beckham or any of those football stars, when really they're just, well, I don't know. Anyway,
Or look like them, or live like them. Yeah, look like them and live like them, you know, and live that kind of, that you know, well, just in, you know, one of the flash car and the restaurant lifestyle, and so on. And you know, so that's some days I think, you know, maybe that's just the test that we're in. You know, it's like you're offered, your deal with yourself is that, you know, you're going to incarnate here, and you're going to experience certain challenges, and the crystal maze, if you like, is that if you can make your way through all of these challenges, and at the end of it find yourself at the center, then you will have won, you know, the Willy Wonka gold ticket to go to the next level, or not, and you come back again. But you know, there's definitely some very important reason behind all of this, and I didn't know there was anything occult to be, you know, concerned about 3 or 4 years ago. But now I'm fairly sure that there's something very important, and very good reason why they've gone to so much lengths to hide this truth from you about who you are. And the ball, for me, the flat Earth is one of many deceptions. If you think about it from a you know, a non-religious point of view, then before the ball there was the book, and you know, and that was, or the many books, and you know, as I used to say as a child, the only one, if any of them are right, surely only one of them could be right. So I'm now of the view that, you know, some of them have good value, but they're not all right. They can't be all right. Looks like we lost Flat Earth Dude.
Yeah, he just messaged in the back chat that he had to go. He's
Cool.
on work day though, isn't he? You know, us it's late at night. For him, it's still.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I've been talking for so long, I don't know.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. We have been going for nearly 3 hours. I don't know if you.
Way.
Yeah, you've been going for nearly 3 hours.
It's like a session.
It was nice to get to know you a bit. Obviously, I see you on things, but you know, and I know you've been on a hangout or whatever before, but it was just nice to get to know you a bit more. But I just, you know, when I was looking at your videos, I was thinking you go on about the spiritual side of things, and you know, and I like the garden and nature and.
Yeah, well, I thank you very much for inviting me on. I you know, it's I made an active decision a few months ago to try and do something more, and I've been wanting to talk and get my voice heard for some time. So this is, you know, an awesome. I did a thing this morning. You know, this is my high profile week. I gonna, you know, stepping it up a little bit because I've been kindly invited on your show, and I'm also going on the Globe Light tour later this week. So for me, this is just like you know, an important milestone along this journey. You know, because as I said earlier on, I want to, just like you, both of you guys, you know, I just want to do my little bit to try and raise the vibration, raise the
Awareness.
raise the awareness, raise the ante, and do something to begin or continue the work that others have done. You know, because we stand on the shoulders of giants here, and to continue doing our little bit to make this world take the world, make it a better place for you and me, the entire human race. That one from Michael Jackson. That's the one I'm thinking about. You know, and that's what we have to do. You know, there's one human race, and it's one love, and we need to kind of find a way through all the shit to find a way to, you know, help our brothers and sisters.
That's nice, that, yeah. I looked into this, well, it's called Noetic Science many years ago, and it's like, well, it's just sung there, basically, you know. If we all thinking the same sort of thought, or if we're all thinking the same thing, that, you know, that's concentration, and that concentration creates that thought. You know, it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully as well,
And
what you're saying.
many people don't understand or don't believe it, or how can I say, or don't trust it. But it's a simple matter of, you know, have faith in it, and it will do it, you know. And if we were all thinking, you know, flat Earth, this is massive, I mean, we know it is massive.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we're all thinking along the same lines of awareness, this is going to tip that scale so that everyone is aware, and that everyone is looking into it, and that everyone is, you know, on the same page that we're getting to, you know, we're at. And yeah, it's exciting times anyway. I know that for sure. Exciting.
Cleaning up our act, you know, that's what we have to do. And we've been held back, man. And this is not a looking down on others, but we have been held back, and it's so exciting. I mean, my wife and I, we look at each other and go, wow, this is such an incredible life that we're living, and we've been saying that just the last 2 days, after having our house invaded by men in black. We've been saying, what an incredible life and what an amazing opportunity and a wonderful thing that this is. And I say that the word evil is live in reverse, isn't it? So, we're here to live, and if you're not living, that's evil. That's probably as far as I mean, obviously the Jimmy Savile and that's a different kind of evil, despicable evil, one that is hard to accept. But I think that we, if we do the right thing and we do bring this beautiful kind of life, and as you said, Astral, if we, with our thoughts create our reality, then the more we can clean up, the more we can get the shit and toxins out of our bodies and freshen up our minds, distill water. And
it's growing, isn't it, as well? Because, I mean, I didn't know you, Roxanne, Harry. I didn't know all these people last year, but I know a lot more people this year.
And where will we be next and the year after that, Karen? I don't want to live too far in the future, but
Power to the people.
it's and I know that Harry's talking about and others are talking about another tour, and there's talk about an American tour and of activism and so on, and these are going to start little forest fires that are going to become unstoppable. And I'd like to be one of those voices that is helping to do my little bit. But I'm also aware that if this goes mainstream, then little voices like mine will be lost in the tsunami of the big voices that are brought in by the BBC to say, oh yes, now this is what you need to think. We got Brian Cox-Liss here, he's Brian Cox's cousin. He's a flat earther. And he's going to tell us all to know.
Really? Oh, dear me.
Anyway, I have chatted for very long. I'm really grateful for you giving me all this time on your platform, Karen.
It's been very nice listening to you, and so thank you very much for that. We're hoping to link up, like I say, with Harry and Roxanne on Thursday. Oh no, you'll be there, won't you? Yeah. You'll be there.
I look forward to seeing you again then.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody in the chat room, and yeah, thank you for letting us get to know who you were a bit more. Astral, do you want to say anything?
Just for the record, the Trinity is the name of a movie with a guy called his name escapes me, Terence Hill. Terence Hill. When I went into the army at the age of 17, my drill sergeant said to me, "You look like Trinity." There's a movie called They Call Me Trinity with Terence Hill and Bud Spencer. It's a 1970 spaghetti western, and that nickname stuck with me. But I'd forgotten about it until 5 years ago when I started looking at my military history again, and it was like, oh yeah, they called me Trinity. So that's where that name comes from. It's not like I particularly wanted to steal it from the church, but given that they've stolen it from us, I think it's appropriate that I take it back.
Yeah, it's quite apt then, probably, really, isn't it?
Well, we are the mind, body, and soul. I think I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I think it's the trilogy, it's the Trinity, it's the three, mind, body, and soul that are in balance. You could have the fittest body, but a very weak soul or very poor mind or something like that. So it's about having the three in balance, and I think that's what we want to strive for, and we're all one mankind. So I'm only speaking on behalf of, hopefully.
See Oddity in the chat room said, great show. So there you go.
See Oddity, I like him.
Thank you, everybody in the chat room. Astral hasn't come back, so that makes a change. He hasn't got something to say. Anyway, thank you, Astral. Thank you, Flat Earth Dude. And thank you to Robin, Lifting the Lid. And thank you, Dave, Trinity 4.
All right. Thanks, Karen. And thanks for your time. All the best. See you again. Bye.
Yeah. Good night, chat room. Mwah.